Alrighty. Are we going? I think so. Hello again, everyone. Good morning, good evening. First time streaming in a while, so it might be a little bit janky. Hello, Cryo. Hello, Seamus. Definitely, first time streaming ever. Thanks for joining me. I thought I'd just come and chat about this little guy from Golden Demon and how everything went, how the build went. I got a bunch of photos. Oh my god, that was really loud. Hey, Zumikito, thanks for following, man. How you doing? Yeah, I've been noticing since I got home, like more and more little problems with the model as well. Today I noticed there's like a little crack in his foot, like just here in the paintwork, that is visible in the official photo, which is very funny. So there's like two big, well, not big, but like two little problems with it that you can see in the GW photo. One is that there's like some super glue residue down here, and then but it's only visible like when the light hits it exactly right, which happened to be the way that the light hits it in the GW photo. And I don't know if you guys can see, but like just here, a little crack has popped up that I think must have happened when it was being judged, because I looked at the photos I had of it just before I handed it in, and it's not there, and then in the official photos it's popped up. So, that goes to show anyone who says, the models have to be 100% perfect to win a Golden Demon is not true, because this has a crack in the paintwork and still won a trophy, so there you go. So yeah, this was a bit of a nightmare project in a lot of ways. Yes. Well, it's there. It's very hard to see, but it is a little bit there. You can definitely see the glue residue of it. I think here. Let me see if I can pull it up actually, because we're in the project bashing stage. That's a good way to start off your stream, talking about your Golden Demon piece, right? Let's just talk about all the problems with it. No worries, Smelly124. Appreciate you tuning in. But just here, see, there's the glue, and it's very hard to see this line. But anyway, let's talk about something fun instead of just tearing down my model, hey? Yeah, so Golden Demon was pretty good. Thought I'd chat a little bit about the process of putting the thing together and the process of painting it, and I got some photos I can share as well. I talked a little bit about it in the Instagram post, but I thought just for first time streaming again, because I can't think of anything else to do, we'll just have a little chat. Did anyone point out the line? It seems like part of the texture. No, I don't think anyone pointed out the problem. I literally noticed it today as I was having a look at this under a lamp to get ready for the stream, funnily enough. If you've only seen the official photos, you can have another look at. Sorry, the camera's at a weird angle, so I might be like holding this at strange angles now and then. Look at the back. As you can see, it is only held in place, hovering from the connection to the rider. The bike's not connected to the base in any other way. The bottom of the bike is painted. It is not unpainted. I don't really have any photos online of the painted bike. There's some nice felt underneath the base to match the model as well. Yeah. So the way it works is a few people have sort of, if you haven't seen the post I made on the build, a few people have sort of thought that there's a pin that goes from his foot through the other foot and into the bike, which is not the case. There is a little pin in this foot, but the main way it's connected is here. There's a rod that goes sort of from quite far down in the base, or the plan was for there to be a rod that goes quite far down into the base, up and then across into this exhaust pipe. and that's sort of how it stays together. And as you can see, one of the big things I had when conceiving this is I wanted it to be very, very solid. Like, you can shake this about and it does not move. I really thought it was important that it's not wobbly. You know, I really don't like it when models are wobbly on their bases. I feel like I don't like holding a model in hand and thinking about anything but how well it's painted. If that makes sense. Like, I just want to be enjoying the model, enjoying the painting, rather than thinking like, am I going to damage this thing by holding it? And when it's got like this crazy bike, this crazy floaty bike, I really didn't want people to think, oh, am I going to destroy this thing by just sort of moving it around? So you can handle it, you can turn it upside down, and you don't want to be rough with it, but essentially it will not move at all, which I thought was good. Yeah, exactly. I wonder where the crack came from. Hey, like I said, I'm blaming the Golden Demon judges for that. Morning 6'2" koala. So yeah, I guess we'll chat a little bit about the build first, I think, because that is kind of, I think, the most impressive part of the model, I'd like to think. The painting, I think, is cool, but I really think the build is sort of what's stuck with people. And it's been really cool to see a lot of people responding really positively to this online. I wanted to go to my first Golden Demon with a cool piece that people would remember, and I feel like hopefully that has kind of done the job. So I'd be super interested how it started. What was the initial inspiration, or which different inspirations came together? So let's chat about that. Hey JC, how you doing as well, man? So first thing I can talk about, I'm going to pop him down and we'll share my browser. First thing I'll chat about is my buddy Juniper. She painted this super cool Drukhari Jetbike. So the idea I had for this Custodes model, I actually had like a really long time ago, like years and years and years ago. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, when I was still working at Games Workshop, and I was just going to do it like the floating bike as a piece for an army, just have a cool character. But I haven't been painting a lot of Warhammer. Like anyone who's sort of followed my painting at all, I mostly paint like large scale stuff, and I wanted to come back to doing Warhammer for Golden Demon eventually. But last year at a competition we have in Australia called ARC, I saw this super cool piece from my friend Juniper, who's Vox Morbus online. Please go and follow her. Why am I not following? This is my personal account, not my painting account. So let's just follow her again. Double follow. So go follow her. She's a cool painter. And she made this Drukhari Jetbike diorama where they're just hanging. This bike is just kind of hanging by her foot. It's actually way more tenuous than mine. And admittedly, she's only got these 2 photos on here, but this bike is hovering. It's only attached to the Drukhari by the foot here. And I was like, man, this is so super cool. I would love to like actually do this idea that I had such a long time ago, written my ideas folder. And I thought, if I'm going to Golden Demon, I'd like to ideally, for the first time, go to Golden Demon with an interesting piece, something that's unique. And this kind of inspired me in a lot of ways. So let's have a look at like the first little mess around with the composition. So this was like kind of where it started. I knew he wanted to be hey, I don't know if that's Bruce or Magnus, but hello either of you guys. As Seamus has said, Juniper's Jetbike is kind of held on by hopes and dreams, and somehow has not collapsed in on itself. Hello, Bruce. You are the cool one, the hairy one, the moustached one. These are all ways in which you're cooler than Magnus. This is kind of where it started. So the original idea was actually to have him stepping off an industrial base, and I was just going to use some of the Necromunda scenery. and have him stepping off like a platform on Necromunda scenery. Hey, Zaba, how you going, man? Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following, man. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. Yes, the Drukhari Jetbike is definitely much lighter, but having had it in hand, it is totally very fragile. And so yeah, this was the idea. But as I sort of posed him, there's a few things that I sort of realized. One, that to have this wing at the front convincingly hanging, I would need to have a gap, right? So this is sort of how I play around with the composition, just lumps of gigantic, disgusting blue tack. Hello, Papa Gwyn. Hello, Compulsion. How you guys going? So I started to try and work out like ways to have him stepping off something. Hey, Fat Sid, how you doing? Thanks for following. Is that alert noise coming through like really loudly or not? I don't know. And so, yeah, we're just kind of playing around with the idea. I think one of the big things was I wanted there to be like a decent gap between... Okay, good. It's just coming through really loudly for me then. Okay. So, yeah. So essentially it was going to be quite a blocky drop off. So the spiral staircase kind of thing didn't come until a little bit later. Thanks for following Scott B and GM Nor. Yeah, so you can kind of see where I was getting at. I'll come back to that foot. But essentially it was going to be like half the base was the staircase, and essentially like the other half was going to be like the ground floor of his like, you know, little room in the Imperial Palace. I'll come back to those things in a sec. But this kind of evolves over the course of putting it together. Hopefully you guys don't mind the slideshow. I can bring back the model in a minute. But so I was still sort of playing around with the composition. I was taking a bit too much time, and I just needed to sort of give myself a kick into starting it. So I just started gluing some bits together. So this is kind of the first bit I made for the whole piece, which was a foot that I sliced in half and then had to run a thin pin through. I think this is his right foot. And then this is how I made the lance. This was an easy thing to start doing early on because I didn't have to make any big compositional decisions. But as you can kind of see, like this is how the lances come in the model. And they're, you know, they're janky as obviously, like there's no lance on its own. You know, so I had to basically like cut this entire thing off here and then replace it with some spear wrapping. This is from the this thing. I think I just cut a little bit off. It might actually, no, I think it actually is from a Stormcast Vindicta spear. But anyway, this is crappy and annoying, and I had to you know, carve all of this away and then try and carve you know, to look relatively neat, and then fix some things. 5 a.m. Sam, jeez, thanks for tuning in. That's some dedication. So easy thing to start with. We got the lance, so we can actually pose the thing. What do we got? Let's try and, yeah, so here, this is essentially the original idea I had for it. So it was going to be a straight staircase. It wasn't going to be a spiral staircase. And then what I wanted to do was, in this sort of flat section of wall, have like some trinkets and stuff. So like, you know, like some mementos to imply that this is like his room in the Imperial Palace where he keeps his bike and he keeps his little Custodes mementos from battles. Because I thought this was quite dramatic, like having all this dead space down the bottom was quite dramatic, but it kind of was a bit, I don't know, there was something not right about it. So it took me a while to sort of play around with it and kind of get ideas like, oh, is it going to be just like a flat base where I'd make the bottom like tiles and stuff, and then I'd have like almost like a you know, like what they have in a jet plane, like a ladder you can move up to the bike and then you can remove afterwards. This is just blue tack, by the way. It's not anything special. It's literally just giant blobs of blue tack so that I can move it around. Hey, Jimmy, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it, my friend. So started drawing it in and you know, trying to work out exactly what's going on. It's Hexa. Thank you very much. Appreciate the jumping on and tuning in. And thanks for following. Chewy Painting, thanks for following. So this is sort of starting to dial in the rough idea, right? So I then decided, like, let's have a proper staircase. Let's have a little, like, docking bay, right? So I'd have, like, a computer underneath. So let me switch back to the actual thing just so we can show people what it looks like, right? So see, little computer screen. So the idea was we wanted to make it seem like, hey, he's docking, you know, the bike here. This is like a permanent station. Bunch of little computers and things like that. Thanks everyone for tuning in, by the way. I really appreciate it. Glad I'm not just here talking to myself. And thanks everyone for following as well. All right, back to the photo. And this is real professional quality artwork, right? So on the other side, I would have, like, you know, maybe like a book of his cool Custodes deeds. Maybe this would be like a little, not a sperm, but a servo skull, just hanging about underneath the bike, and it would help sort of accentuate the hoveringness. And so, yeah, that was the vague idea, but it was very square, right? And I always wanted to have it on a round plinth, but it was still going to be very square. But as you'll sort of see as things go on, it kind of just, it didn't feel right. You know what I mean? It was never quite correct. So here we start just chopping up some plastic card to give myself an idea for what the thing would look like when it was built. I build, like, I think 5 staircases for this stupid thing. This is the plinth I end up using. And I like this in that, like, again, it's quite a dramatic drop-off, right? But there's so much dead space around the bottom that compositionally it's just kind of janky. And it doesn't really lead you into the figure very well. I had originally actually thought of having the lance at this kind of outstretched angle, and again, sort of as the build goes on, that switches. It is a Hera model plinth. Yeah, it's a 70mm plinth. I believe, like, the usable space, I think, is 70mm, and the bottom of it is 80. I'm just going to check. Yeah, I think that it's something like that. It's 65 or 70, something like that. But yeah, it is from Hera. So again, we're just sort of doing some more testing. Like, I was going to have a little shelf here of little doodads, like maybe some skulls and a book at the top that I wanted to have, like, you know, I know how the Custodes in the lore, like, have all their deeds written down onto their armor. But I guess, you know, we can also put them in a book if we want. Oh, just some artwork references. Okay, so starting to pose the miniature. This was really the biggest difficulty in the build was trying to get this pose right and trying to get the head aligned with his right foot, so that it looked like the weight is on his right foot and it's not super heavily on his left foot that's going to be on the bike. I wanted there to be like a nice distribution between the two, but yeah, this was really the biggest sort of difficulty. I'm going to just have a quick look at the photo, see if we can have a look through. Yeah, and here we go. And then this was working out exactly how I'm going to make the bike sort of float, right? So finding the spot that we're going to drill into. This was just a test bike. So altogether, I think I built 5 bikes over the course of doing this. The main one that I had to scrap, and then 3 like testers or spares just to try out different parts of the builds. I can show you them all in a little while. Actually, here, I can show you right now. So we got our main guy. We got one tester with a hole in it. I got another that was, I think I was going to use this bike, but I messed up some of the cleaning up. And then there's this one as well, which is sort of glued into this piece of wood, and I would sort of use this to get the pose of the figure correct. Because obviously the problem with the bike is that even in the testers where I have the pin in, into this little hole, the angle of the bike would always droop down like this. And I knew that the bike would never be at its proper angle until literally like I glued it right at the end of the whole thing. So to make sure I was getting the foot and the model at the right angle, I had to use this as like my tester just on a block. So lots of tests, lots of testing went into the stupid thing. I'll show you the next thing I put together, which is I started trying to, instead of just using the stupid dodgy plastic card, like carve something out of just some styrofoam in like the exact shapes. And again, like for a long time, I'm a bit over a week into the build at this point. I started on the 1st of December, so this is the 9th. I was still convinced it was going to be like a squared off thing. Did I buy multiple bike kits? I went through 2 boxes of Vertus Praetors for the build. Yeah, I had them already in the giant hoard of Warhammer that I bought before I left working at Games Workshop. So I didn't luckily actually have to buy anything new, because yeah, there's 3 in a kit and I went through 5 bikes. But yeah, luckily I already had a ton of Custodes in the giant hoard of Warhammer in the backlog. So this is another thing. I was sort of at one point going to put the lance a second step down rather than on the top step. Alizarian plays, thanks for following. Hello. Yeah, so it took me a while to get away from the square, right? Because it was not right. Here you can see a little video of the thing in the round. Early on concept, how I held it up was with this super glue lid. But yeah, I really like the thing that was nice about this initial composition was really that that I feel like the gap was more dramatic, right? The empty space was more dramatic, but it just is it's not a harmonious composition, I think, just because it's so like starting and stopping, you know, the lines don't match nicely. And I think instantly when you see this made of cork chunks, it already just looks a lot better. And so yeah, then just playing around with ideas, I got the idea for the spiral and knew that this was sort of the way to do it. It's significantly better, right? Hello, Sens Poods. We love the chunks. Exactly. This is just some thick cork board. I think this cork is from like cork mats from IKEA. Yeah. Do I have a specific group of individuals to help me out? I do have like a group of individuals who, you know, apparently help me out, but more often than not, what they'll do is I'll send them a photo and they'll just say it's bad. And I'll have to try and work out a way to improve it. So yeah, this is Matthew City, right? I was wondering, have you seen the Scout Speeder piece from 2009 GD? I have not seen that. I think, you know, I don't know where like the initial idea came from. What I mentioned earlier was I was sort of influenced by a piece a friend of mine did to do it, but I had the idea for quite a while, and it kind of just evolved over time. And so yeah, like I said, the initial idea was to do him stepping off a industrial gantry with just a big gap rather than in this staircase. These honeycomb building faces give me a crazy feeling. Thanks for tuning in, Zaba. I appreciate it, my friend. I'll chat to you later, mate. Yeah, exactly. So think this is much better. Made some steps again out of the whatever this is, styrofoam. Just to give myself some ideas. Started looking up some references for different spiral staircases to give me some ideas for where to, like the design, the specific design of the stairs. Papa Win, thanks for following. And so another just test staircase made out of cut up foam. So I'll show you guys now how I actually start building the staircase. Let's skip through some of this crap. Here we go. This is a nice chaotic vision of the desk. where I've got like all the different bikes built and a million things in different phases. But anyway, we got there in the end. So let me just switch back to the actual in-person thing. Yeah, so we've got, basically what I did was I got big chunks of milliput and just rolled them out to the right thickness and then cut the stairs from them. So I made the test stairs out of this, I think it's like just like foam board from Officeworks. And it's like about 0.5 centimeter thick. And so to get the milliput to the right thickness, essentially I just put a chunk of milliput on the table and then like put these on either side of it and then just put a blob in the middle and used like a rolling pin to roll it flat so that it would be to the right thickness. And then I just got a little stencil of the staircase and sawed it out into the actual steps. And so that is essentially how I made the steps. So I'll show you guys an actual photo of that. Here's my milliput chunks of stair. I cut out 4 steps. Obviously, that's how many I used in the build, in big triangles. So this is these are the actual stairs that I ended up using. I dried it first. So I let it fully cure, and then I just hand sawed it with a tiny little saw, and then sanded it smooth. I didn't do it while the milliput was wet. Thanks for following Plasticastor. Well, here we go. These are some references. And then the other thing I did, right, which is make another reference of the staircase out of clay. So I still have that just here. I'll bring it out. Here we go. So the plinth is the same diameter as the one I actually use. So I needed to stop messing around with crappy blue tack and dodgy plastic art and actually make the proper staircase to the exact sort of size. So this thing is almost identical to the real staircase in terms of the way it was done. I don't know if you can see exactly. It's not 100% exactly the same, but it's pretty close. And then this, I was going to have some candles on it, obviously, which I did in the end. But yeah, I needed just an actual reference of the thing. So what was the sanding process? Did you use sanding sticks or just small chunks of sanding paper? I used just proper sandpaper I bought from Bunnings on a just laid flat. I can show you once we start actually gluing the stupid things in place. So one of the biggest problems I had with this project was sort of like indecision. I would kind of get things almost ready to glue in, but then not glue them. And once I actually sort of started putting things in place, then things kind of came together a little quicker. So going back to some photos, you can see here, this is it on the fake staircase. Again, most of the model is still blue tacked. I've started sculpting the joints a little bit. And I was going to have like more messy candles down the bottom. Like they've all been placed there by like some, I don't know, some guys that go and help the casino, some servitors or whatever. What do they have? Like serfs, some serfs or something. Okay. And yeah, and I think, this is essentially the main composition done, right? The angle of the lance changes a little bit, but the main gist of it is here. Right, and then we got to start actually doing stuff with the milliput now. So this is all just milliput. The stairs are just milliput. The floor was a mix of milliput and Tamiya QuickType, because milliput on its own I feel like is not as sticky. So the Tamiya QuickType is just in there a little bit, maybe 30% QuickType, just to make it a bit more sticky. And so there are pins through this. As you can see, I kind of, I don't know if you can tell from this, but I numbered the stairs, 1, 2, and 3. And then the bottom one has a bit of a curve. And then I kind of tried to sketch on the milliput, just with a piece of a pencil, like roughly where the spiral was going to be. Oh, there you go. That's a much better photo. So essentially, things are cut. I didn't have to cut the inside of the staircase perfectly because the rail of the stairs was going to cover all of this anyway. But this bottom one I had to be a bit more accurate with. So yeah, then we start shaping the rail. Now this is, if I could do a main thing different about the whole build, this rail was probably the thing that I'm least happy with about everything that I sculpted in the base, by a long way actually. There's plenty on the model that is sculpted not super well, but as you can see, this is blobby and disgusting and shitty. And I think a big part of that is because I did it on the base, right? This is not a separate component. I literally just like slapped the putty on the base and am sort of sculpting it there. And what that meant was it was very hard to get sandpaper in the right way to make this smooth, and I could never really get it super smooth. I could cover it a little bit with painting, but if you ever get a chance to look at this thing in hand, you'll see that the rail of the staircase is really dodgy. And I think if I had made it separately and then glued it on later, I would have been much better equipped to be able to make it nice and smooth and good. But in the end, unfortunately, it was not the case. This is then I add the skulls. Now, the skulls, funnily enough, were actually not planned from the start. This is a very like fortuitous thing that you get when you get to make something by hand rather than digitally, right? I was just scrounging through the bits box for some crap to use for this model in general, and found these lines of skulls that I had cut off the Sector Imperialis, like the Basilicanum, the big 2-story building. There's these skulls, like if you build the kit a certain way, you kind of have to cut these off. And I found them and I was like, this is perfect, right? I can use this as the lining for the stairs. And so luckily I had made the stairs like almost to the exact perfect thickness to use these things. Unfortunately, when I glued the thing together, I ended up leaving like a little bit of a gap between each step, right? So you can kind of see a little bit of a gap here. And then when I was sanding the top of this top step, I sanded it a little bit thinner. And so you can kind of see, like the top of the skulls is quite close to flush with the step. And so I had to sand the bottom of these down, obviously, from what you can see here. But the top step is a tiny, tiny bit less high. And so the skulls don't fit in quite as nicely. Did I have a process to protect the plinth while sanding or just being more precise? I did not bother because I was going to prime it again anyway, so it doesn't matter. I sanded the whole thing smooth, and then it didn't really matter if I damaged the plinth here because I was just going to prime it again and it would cover everything anyway. So not a huge deal. So you can kind of see, I'll play you this so you can see the thing in 360 at this stage. So I'd started, this is again roughly the way the staircase ends up. This control screen obviously changes a little bit, but I was just getting sort of the little bits, and yeah. How much is this for you to sell it? Scar 35 asks. To be totally honest, I have no plans on selling this. It's my first Golden Demon. I don't think I really want to sell it. I don't know, if someone came around with some absolutely insane offer, then I'd think about it. But right now, I'm going to keep it. First Golden Demon, can't get rid of it, right? So that's the main base and how we got there. As you can kind of see again in the photo, let me just go back here. Sanding this rail smooth, it looks pretty smooth, but as you can kind of see on the inside, it's a little janky. And on the outside, especially, like it's dodgy. So yeah, I was really unhappy with that, and that's the biggest sort of regret I have about the whole build, is not making this rail separately so I could sand it nicely. That foot is doing God's work holding the bike up. Indeed. So this is how it does it, right? Let's have a look. This is it. So this is how it was built. This pin is 3 millimeters thick. And as I mentioned earlier in the stream, thanks, by the way, to Maxwell and Design Art Gaming and Plastica Store, everyone for following. Much appreciated. Wouldn't sanding the plinth have a different feel, and varnish sanding plinth equals matte unwanted equals sand? So so I sanded the whole plinth, Sam. So when I finished getting the staircase flush to the end of the plinth, I then sanded the entirety of the plinth to the same grit, so that when I primed it, everything would feel the same. And I can talk a little bit about preparing the plinth when I sort of get to that point, I guess. But yeah, essentially you just do the whole thing. So this is the pin that the whole build is built around. So it's a 3 millimeter thick brass rod that I bent with a pair of pliers at a right angle. So you can see at the back, this is one continuous pin that goes from the base into the bike. And I essentially threaded the pieces of leg through the pin and then sculpted the rest of his body around the pin. So I thought that it was not going to be stable enough if it was two separate pins, one in the leg and one in the bike. I thought it would still wobble and it would still have a chance of breaking. And so I wanted one continuous pin, which proves to be a big problem later on if you know that, you know, the story, which I'll tell later, about how the model was damaged on the way to Golden Demon. Essentially one big continuous pin. Did I mix Tamiya when sculpting with milliput for the kneecap? So right now, pretty much every join on the figure is sculpted entirely with the Tamiya putty, not with milliput. So this is all 100% Tamiya quick type. So essentially, this was a huge pain, and I could have done it better. One of the biggest problems I had with the whole build was that I'm not a particularly accomplished sculptor. I didn't have much practice, so a lot of this stuff took a hell of a lot longer than I wanted it to. So you can look at our time of this photo. This is the 31st of December. Like I said earlier, I started on the 1st of December. And initially my plan was to be done with sculpting by this point. I wanted to do a month of sculpting and 3 months of painting. It was a bit foolish or a bit ambitious to think I could do my first ever sculpt build like this in only 1 month. And so that's really, I think, one of the biggest problems I had with the whole thing was not enough time and not enough practice. So we threaded all the bits in, and then this bit of pin is what attaches to the bike to make it nice and stable. Note to self, if you're ever going to do something like this, use a hollow pin. And we'll get back to why a little later. So at the back, I wanted to have a dock, you know, where his bike is going to dock. This is a bit from a kit, a kill team kit, you know, the Gallo Dark kill team. I think it's Soul Shackle. I can't remember exactly which one, but it's one of those. It's the one with the Votan, I think. Or maybe it's the one before that with the, I don't know, whatever. So it's from some consoles. I end up essentially cutting this screen in half and cutting this screen off. So we only have one screen. Again, as you can see, the finished thing here. We only have one screen. And these dials come from another component, another kit. We can go back to the photos and guide you through it. So this is the little dials that I use. Compulsion asks, Sculptors, is there any downside to using 5-minute epoxy in place of super glue? So I used 5-minute epoxy to connect the bike to the figure in the end. I don't know if there's a downside beyond this. It takes a while to set. And you've got to kind of babysit it while it's drying. Because even after 5 minutes, right, it's not really dry. It doesn't dry for like, you know, a day. But it's way more... what's the word? It's way harder. It's not as easy to break as super glue. So I did use 5-minute epoxy on this, at least in the bit where the bike connects to the rider, like in the this pin, right? In the end of this pin, I used 5-minute epoxy. You just use super glue because you want an instant fix. So this was the full design of the little computer screen. So we cut the second screen off and we replaced it with some gauges, just because two screens would be unnecessary and it would look weird, I think, having a second screen cut in half. Basically the general idea was like, this is his docking port, and it's going to be a marble staircase because, you know, it's in the Imperial Palace for Custodes and they're going to have a bunch of really cool stuff, a bunch of fancy things. When competing in 40k single, can use any bits and materials from 40k. I believe you can use any bits from Games Workshop in general. I don't believe they will disqualify you if you use some Age of Sigmar bits, because this had I believe at least one Age of Sigmar bit on it. I think as long as it's Games Workshop bits, you're alright. I just think the only restriction they have is you're not allowed to use Middle Earth outside of Middle Earth, and you're not allowed to bring AOS or 40k parts into Middle Earth. That's just a separate thing for Golden Demon. But as far as I am aware, they won't disqualify you for using an Age of Sigmar bit in a 40k build, as long as it looks correct, you know, in universe or whatever. As far as I know, don't quote me on that, but I don't believe it's in the rules that they have to be from 40k, or like not from Horus Heresy, for example, as long as they're Games Workshop bits. So, staircase. So this is just a piece of plasticard it's like a quarter pipe, right? So it's got a little curve to the top, and so the idea was use this at the top and then just sand it smooth so that it looks a continuous part of the staircase. Yeah, Cryo, exactly. So Albert's Slayer Sword winning piece wizard is based on Araman, so yeah, exactly. You can use 40k bits in AOS and vice versa, as long as they look appropriate. This bottom part where the stair curves, I had to heat the plastic with a hairdryer and bend it by hand, which was a huge pain, and they split a bunch, but there we go. We've got basically our composition starting to fall into place. I take a lot of the same photos I am noticing when I go through these. I haven't really looked through them actually before doing this, funnily enough. So what do we got? Not that this blah blah blah. Yes. Yeah. So I think that's right, Desmond. Like Middle Earth's kind of its own thing, because of the licensing agreement Games Workshop has. I think they're very careful about how they do this. So hey, we got some references. This is Sunny's cool Custodes bike, which was finalist at Golden Demon. This folder just has a lot of random stuff that I was looking at while I was making the piece. And so if you don't follow Sunny, check his super cool Custodes bike squad out. They were really good. Again, one of the finalists in 40k as well. So we're looking at lots of examples of cool marble stuff, just to give me some ideas for designs for the floor pattern, right? So I was just looking at all this to try and work out what I was going to do for the floor, the tile pattern. These are photos I took when I was in France, so at Napoleon's tomb. Very understated here, but very Warhammer, right, in its own way. Some marble patterns from Pinterest, just to give me some ideas for painting. And so this is kind of where I got the idea for the bottom staircase, like these references, right? So you can see how they kind of curve in the bottom stairs. So it's not a design I made up, right? Like these real life marble staircases in these old buildings do have this curved bottom step in some places. See. All right. So then we've engraved the pattern in, right? So first step of actually getting our tiles right. Oh no, I think I had just drawn it at this stage. This is just pencil, isn't it? Yeah. So a border for the stairs and just roughly drawing in the tiles. If I remember right, I actually cut squares of plasticard out and traced it, as well as using a ruler for all of this. And then when I went to do the engraving, I had a ruler like sat on the thing and then just carved along that with a carving tool. So here you can see a top-down view of the base. Again, I think you can kind of see, this curve is not not that great, I don't think. Doesn't really, I think it's not even, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't quite flow in the way I would like it to. And again, I really feel like if I had been able to build this separately, I could have made it just a little bit better. This is the hole where his foot's going to go. And then sketching out the idea of writing the Imperator on the base. So anyone, a few people asked me, like, did I do it digitally or like use a stamp or anything? No, I just did it by hand. We'll skip forward a little bit, just because I think we're moving on. Here we go. Nice picture of my vacuum cleaner, vacuuming up all the milliput dust from sanding. Spare bits of sausage. So here we go, carving the actual letters. Literally just did it by hand, starting like small and then carving outwards until the letters looked nice. At one point I did fill these in just because when I was carving them, they weren't a sort of uniform depth. So Fat Sid, it was with some carving tools from, I'll grab them out and show you. It was not with either a knife or a Dremel. It was with these like tools from a brand called Steady Tool. And I'll show you just on the stream again. So this is what the heads look like of them. So here you can see. So one is just like a chisel. So they make a thing like where you just, you know, screw this into just a straight chisel. And then this is like a weird little block. I had 4 of these at different thicknesses. So this is 0.2 of a millimeter. I had a 0.15, 0.3, I think. And essentially I just use this flat end and just start scraping away until I get our letters here. So literally, as you can kind of see, is that, let me zoom in a little bit for you. And Loku, thanks for following. So they're from a brand called Steady Tool. They weren't expensive either. They're pretty cheap, just off Amazon. So you can kind of see it literally was just a matter of like carving all the letters in place and making sure it's the right sizes. You can kind of see I think this is the thinnest one. This fits like bang on into these lines. So it was literally just like back and forth with this little guy in his housing, which is here we go, one of these things, right? I did also have this actually, which is like a needle, like it's almost like the tip of an airbrush needle, I guess. So I actually drew in the pattern with this, and then I traced it with the thicker sculpting carving tool thing heads. They have some name, but I can't remember what it is. Yeah, here we go. There, look at that, non-spun, just a recommendation. Steady Tool 0.2 millimeter push knife. There you go. Yeah. All right. Okay. Just get some of this crap out of my way. Yeah, nice base. Good job, team. Yeah, definitely can recommend getting these guys. They're very, very helpful. So that's how this was carved in. I got a bunch of photos of me, I think, refining them. Here you go. Here's the 3 tools. I barely used the knife. Like I said, it was mostly these other 2 guys that were doing all the heavy lifting. Yeah. So Imperator was the idea. Just some, vaguely 40k-ish word, Imperium-ish word on the base to make it sound good. Here's some more pics of Sonny's Custodes. I was lucky that he was painting these at the same time because I could just have a look at his and get some inspo. His were obviously painted super different to how I wanted to paint mine, but at least he got to do some heavy lifting for me. Some heads from Mr. Jojiko here for some inspo, and from Jordan Lead White, just for some references for later on. So I think at this point we're starting to do a bit more sculpting, right? So another sort of issue with the sculpt I think I had was, see here, this fold in his leather gaiters. Is that what they're called? I think gaiters, the leather outer bit of his boots. On the one that is the official one, it has this extra fold, and I didn't sculpt the extra fold, which I think was a bit of a mistake, and it kind of is noticeable in my opinion when it's painted. Like if you go back to the actual model, right, I feel like there is a bit of a sort of disharmony between the bottom of this boot, right? It looks just kind of blobby, and this boot, which kind of looks like it's got this nice extra crease in. I think it makes it look nicer. So that's another thing I would change if I were to do this with any hindsight. I think it's not as bad because his foot is kind of outstretched here, and it's sort of a bit more bent in on itself here, like you know, because he's in a different pose. I don't think it's super jarring, but you know, when you're assessing these projects at the end of the day, you want to try and identify all the problems that you would have. And what you would do differently for the next time. And yeah, I really think that is a bit of a disparity. Now, as you can kind of see as well, because I'm not a great sculptor, a lot of my process, hey, thanks for following Quay. A lot of my process was when I would sculpt these folds in cloth and stuff, I'm just not a good sculptor, so I couldn't really get them super good when the putty was wet. Just because I'm not super practiced with the sculpting tools, so a lot of the time I would just kind of get these vague shapes in place, and then I would just sand them and carve them back until they looked vaguely okay. And so obviously, as you can see, like these folds and blobs and stuff, like they look terrible, but I would sand them until they kind of look all right. So did I notice that when painting, or do you think it's harder to spot when it's putty or plastic? To be honest, I was pretty aware of it the whole time. But I thought it was a compromise I could make that would be okay in the end, just because I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel confident enough in my sculpting to get it super good, and I'm kind of running out of time. Like, we're already 7th of January, and we're not at a point where we're even close to painting the stupid model. And so if something looked okay, I felt like I'm going to have to compromise in order to actually finish the project. I don't know how to pronounce this name, person who just followed me, but thank you. And so yeah, there were definitely compromises made, and more as the build goes on, just in the name of getting things done in time. So another thing I'll point out, I'll try and find the photos for it, was this. This is when I do this. So I extend the footrests for the bike, right? So I got an extra bit of plastic, just flat plastic. If I had had the right thickness of plastic card, it would have made it a lot easier. But actually this flat bit of plastic is from a floor level of a Legions Imperialis building terrain kit. You know how they got those buildings that have like little floors? They were just kind of the exact right thickness. Here, I've got a component here I can show you in the bits pile. So see here, in those buildings that they make, that is what those bike extensions are made from. I just cut little bits of them off, and they were sort of the right thickness to go with the bike. So essentially, as you can kind of see here, right? Actually, maybe I'll go back a couple photos, just to the previous point. Where are we? Sorry, everybody. This is really annoying. Here we go. So as you can see here, the pose is right, the composition of the build is right, but he's tiptoeing onto the bike, and this is no good. This is not realistic. This is how the bike comes. These are how big his little footrests are, because obviously on the kit bike, his feet are just flush against these little guys. And so essentially, rather than reposing the whole thing, because this gap and composition is really nice, I really like this, right? This gap, I think lends to the floatingness, and it's subtle, but it's there. I didn't want to repose him to make his foot more on the bike, so I thought I'd extend the platform out so that he looks like he's more convincingly resting on the footrest. And so that is what I did. Essentially extend this, and then I added this wire just to make it look a bit more convincing, and then just give his foot more room to sit on. And so as you can see, there we go. You know, again, the angle of the bike is not exactly right because obviously I haven't glued the bike in. But as you can see here, the foot is more convincingly on the footrest, and I didn't have to change the overall composition or the angle of the bike or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, so there you go. So yeah, essentially that was that idea. It was a bit of a pain to where did we go? To get these pins bent at the right angle, but I think I did an okay job-ish. Here you can kind of see them. I think they look relatively natural. But one of the another sort of regret I have is how I painted these. It's not super great. It's just a thin piece of brass rod, Sam. So what I would use, like with pinning a miniature, like a super thin, like a 0.5 millimeter. I can't remember exactly what thickness it is. You could use a paper clip, but the brass rod I just found sort of relatively easy to bend. So back to the build. So other components on the base, just for anyone who wants to know, this little boxy thing with the skull is from the Sisters of Battle Rhino kit. These two candles are from the oh man, what's her name? The Sister of Battle, Amelia. I think Amelia Novena. I think that's her name. She was like the first plastic Sister of Battle they made when they were like redoing the Sisters of Battle range thing. So that's what they're from. And I actually now, for the life of me, cannot remember where I got this stupid Imperial Eagle from. Because they asked me at Golden Demon for like a list of bits, and I could not remember. It's from a terrain kit, and I just can't remember which one it is. I think it's a Kill Team terrain kit as well, but I can't remember. Sorry. So these are some sanding sticks I made. Just a little tip, you know, if you need to sand some stuff that's really thin, you can get some sandpaper and put it, like, super glue it on the end of a brass rod and sand stuff. So I also glued some little trinkets on the inside of the staircase. So here we go. So purity seal, a little whatever this is, scroll thingy. And then this circle is from a Custodes Vexillus Praetor guy, you know, the banner guy, but just like cut a circle bit off. Yeah, so I think I actually have it here. Here we go. I've got all the bits spare. I'll show you guys in a little while. Here, one of these things. See? Like one of these. I think there's another version of this that has like one with a different thingy. So yeah, that's how I made those. Sam, since I don't have a ton of GW bits and rely on my local gaming store bits, is there a way to take a picture of a bit and have a system or tip of nerds to find said kit? For what it's worth, I think even at I don't know if Demon really lets you use a ton of third-party bits, but I mean, you know, hit up the internet. Someone will know if you're looking for parts. That is the nice thing about wanting to do one of these builds, is if you've got a gigantic horde of Warhammer that is kind of seemingly unending, it's very easy to find components, isn't it? Oh yeah, one other little touch to the platform here was at the bottom. I added a piece of wire, which I was going to make as like a hazard stripes thing, so that you know, it makes it a tiny bit more industrial. And then this was just like a cable, going to be a cable again with like a hazard stripe. So just filling the space and making this a bit nicer. Another regret I have about this whole build is I should have made this entire panel before I glued it into the goddamn base. It was very messy, and if you look at it, I'll show you actually now. When you look at it properly, you can see I really butchered a lot of these areas. You can kind of see it's already looking pretty dodgy, and it looks even more worse for wear by the time I build it. Like, you know, look at this. It's crazy how shonky all of this stuff looks. And so again, by the way, just to pile on the GW myth busting, it doesn't matter if it's not 100% perfect, right? Everyone has problems with their entries or something, unless you're Albert, you know, who has special Albert, you know, autism powers that make him like a ultimate perfectionist. I couldn't do that. I just have some jank in there that I couldn't get rid of, and it was still fine. And so yeah, if you look at the thing at the back, oops, sorry, we're zooming in. I don't know if it's super visible to you guys, but can you see that this part of the wire is thinner than this part of the wire, right? It kind of gets thinner as it goes to the left. That is literally just because I had to clean it and I did damage to it. And then in here, like, oh man, this is one of my least favorite parts of the whole model. Like, this is really, oh, it's not good. Let's stop looking at it. All right, so back to the build. So let's see if we can skip forward a tiny bit. If we've got something fun to skip forward to. How are we looking here? Okay, so we're starting to actually lock things close to in place. So helmet, I knew the plume was going to come down here in the legs, in between his legs. And sort of the idea was that in the overall composition, right, you have this sort of sweep around the staircase that you know is going to keep guiding you up toward the focal point, right? There's going to be some red on the tips of the candles. There's going to be red on the tip of his plume helmet. And then that's going to hopefully keep guiding you back to the focal point of the model. Again, at this stage, I was still a bit unsure. Are we going to have the lance down a step or up a step? Just because of the amount of space I needed. So at this point, he's actually leaning forward a lot more than he ends up leaning forward in the final build. I actually end up having to extend his torso quite a bit and extend his legs quite a bit. Now, it's quite hard to tell in the photos, but he's probably about 60 millimeters taller than a normal Custodes by the end of the whole build. He's quite a lot larger in scale, just because I needed a bit more room in the joints, in the waist and in the legs to get this composition right and have this gap be nice and noticeable. So let's go back. Yeah, exactly. It's lore accurate. You know, they're not all uniform height, but basically to keep this gap here from the golden angle of the piece, I needed to make him bigger. The one thing I have a little tiny baby gripe about with my official photo from GW is that the wing, it doesn't have this gap. The wing overlaps the staircase a tiny bit. And so I've seen a few people online comment that they think that the wing is attached to the staircase to help it hover, but it's not. And I just wish my photo had the gap, but that's all right. It looks good. The painting looks good in the photo, and that's not always the case in the GW Golden Demon photos. So here we go. We're sculpting the legs, getting the joints right. Oh, we got some more reference. Here we go. Again, let's have a look at Sunny's cool Custodes bike squad. They're very nice. So here we go. We can use this as an example. Obviously in the proper Vertus Praetors, they have this flowy cloak, and obviously my guy is not flying, and so I had to sculpt this cloth from scratch. So good thing the judges get more than a single photo to look at. Indeed. And so I started small just by making the flap sort of roughly the right size. Now the cloak, the cape, tailcoat thing that I end up sculpting is not really super accurate to the way that the cape of the biker squad is, but it's kind of close enough, and I need to make it work for a guy standing still, so it's a little different. So this is just me testing a secondary viewing angle. Getting the helmet at the right angle in his hand took a little bit of trial and error, because essentially I wanted the flat of this helmet viewable from this angle where we're sort of flush with the back of the bike. So let me just go back to the actual figure. So when I was planning the thing, I sort of planned it around 3 main viewing angles. So we have here like our sort of golden angle, which is kind of in this general area. It doesn't have to be ultra specific, right? He's on a circular plinth. It's not going to be a perfect golden angle. But this is roughly where I was sort of aiming the main viewing angle to be, sort of in this kind of general area. Then this one here at the back, sort of, well, yeah, here, roughly here. So sort of in line with the flat of his Custodes spear. And, you know, sort of, again, we want a window, right? Like, it doesn't have to be something super specific. It's a three-dimensional object, right? Like, we can have a rough window of viewing angle. Thanks for following Juju and Frostblight as well. GW's inability to get the best angle than the author wanted it seems to be an integral part of their training. To be fair, I think they did a very good job in the winners' photos this year, especially. I just wish it could have been a tiny bit better. With their photo for my entry, they prioritized a better look at the model's head, which I can really understand because, you know, the models are about the models, right? In my sort of idea of what I think the best angle is, I think it's kind of in that general area because you still do get a good view of his head, but you get to see the bike floating. They went somewhere around here, which again, it still has a nice, like, look at this nice curve, but it doesn't look as floating in a 2D image, right? And you get I think a better focal, like sort of better focus on the face. So I don't begrudge them too much, but I think I just personally like it here. And then this is sort of our third main angle, right? And so the idea is we've got the screen visible, you're kind of squared off with the screen. We've got this sort of V that frames the helmet and then frames the lance, sort of dragging you back down. And then we've got a nice sort of look at the bike, a nice separation between, I think, all three, like by some color contrast, like in the robe, the whatever this is, pants and cape. So there's a little bit of separation between his armor on the figure and the armor on the bike. So getting the angle of the head, the helmet, was kind of tough. Again, because when I'm doing this, I never have the bike at the right angle. Because if I'm not holding the bike in place, I could never get the pins to hold the bike in the exact right place on their own. Whenever I stop touching this thing, it kind of just starts drooping a little bit until I glued it in place. So it was always a bit of a pain and required a bit of back and forth, and also like a bit of kind of hoping and praying that when I actually do glue the whole thing together, it works, because there was always a chance with this whole build that it didn't work. And I would never know if it didn't work until like the moment of truth when I glue the whole thing together. And so it was a bit risky, but luckily it sort of all came together. I think, again, see how I'm having to hold the bike in place to get the angle right. Like as soon as I stop touching the bike, it kind of droops down, and is not exactly the sort of right angle. But anyway, here we go with we got our lance on the top step now, again where it's kind of going to end up. Let's start skipping ahead because some of these photos are a bit too iterative. We want to actually look at and talk about some new stuff, don't we? Okay, so sculpting the actual figure. So one thing I'll also mention, I mentioned a bit in my post of the model, but there are bits from almost every single Custodes kit that was available at the time. The torso and groin and legs obviously are from the bikers, but the arms are not from the bikers, nor are the shoulder pads. The head is, and the lance is obviously in the helmet, but the arms, the gloves, all of that stuff's from different Custodes kits, like the Wardens, the regular guys, or what are the big guys called? The Terminator looking guys. And then I also use bits from Valerian, the captain, the one that comes with the Sister of Silence. So I think there's 6 Custodes kits bits that we used, so including these thigh plate things. So here I'm starting to sculpt his like tail coat, and it looks real good, right? Look at that. That is just a masterpiece of sculpting. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm not a great sculptor. I could not get this done in one hit while the putty is wet. It was just an absolute shit show of like carving and sanding and like, you know, scraping away until we got something looking good. Exactly, Frankenstody. Hey Sebastian as well, how you doing? So I got this. This is actually sculpted around a bit of brass sheet, like a thin piece of brass sheet. Which shout out to Ryan Sick Minis on YouTube, who's like a crazy good sculptor. He gave me a suggestion to get some of this like thin piece of brass, like it's like paper thin. You can cut it with scissors. So the Milliput Tamiya quick type mix goes around that, and essentially we just have to go in a you know, we try and get the folds roughly in place, and then we sand them until they look good. And this right hand side was significantly easier to get done than the left hand side. Yes, Sebastian, it was good to meet you in person at Adepticon. It was pretty crazy time, but yeah, here we go. We're starting to get things locked into place. So we've had to sculpt the shoulder pads, like the inside bit under the big shoulder pad, to get the shoulders in the right angle. Sculpt some webbing to get these arms connected, and look at that, just a masterpiece down there, isn't it? So, and this is kind of how I did it. And again, this is just like, man, again, I think like if someone was a competent or practiced sculptor, they could have done this in, you know, a much easier way than me. I kind of just had to finish a bit, then whack another blob on, and then sand it back and hope that it would stay on and not crack off. Yes, did have the matching shirts. And so, yeah, like, also just bears noting, as you can see, I have added a second pin into the bike. So as time went on, I got a bit worried that the one pin, even though I knew it would be stable, would maybe pivot vertically up and down when it was glued in. So I added this second small pin just for an extra bit of stabilization in the bike. So now we're getting pretty close to the final build, you know, like the final composition. I think it's very close at this stage. Is this a... No, let's go forward. As you can see, we've got the much more upright angle. He's not leaning forward as much as he used to be. There's enough room for his lance to sit on that top step. Our head is almost in exactly the right spot. Hey, OP Minis, that's Oliver, I assume. Thanks for joining. And so, yeah, we're pretty close to locking in the final composition. I've changed the head to this biker head. If you noticed before, I was on a bold head, but I think this one was cooler. Yeah, we're getting there. What else can we talk about in terms of challenges with the build? So again, I took a lot of photos, because what I tend to do, if you get sick of seeing like the same photo a million times, is like there are little tiny differences, right? Like as you can see, like in the shoulder pad here, and I need to sort of sit with them maybe overnight, or try and see, is there something that I need to change or not. All right, actually, here's something we can talk about. It is the plume of the helmet. So we got a sculpt in the plume. We sculpted the fingers. These are just quick type. This was a huge pain, as you can imagine, obviously sculpting tiny fingers. I had, for reference, a bunch of Custodes hands next to me, just to try and get the size of the fingers correct. It's not 100% correct, but it's kind of close enough. How do you hold it together to dry fit the whole build? Just blue tack. So it is Loku. It's two things. It's blue tack, and as you can see on this arm here, we have pins in everything. Now I hope I have a photo of this. I don't know if I do, but I not only pinned here, but I also had like a tiny chunk of plastic just for an extra bit of like stabilization that I kind of like when I was sculpting the inside of the arm, because all of that needed to be sculpted as well. I kind of like put some Vaseline on the model and just pressed it in so it molded around the pin and the extra bit of plastic, and then just pulled it off and let it dry. And then that way, when you put it on, it kind of sets, it will sit in the right spot without moving too much. The other thing though is you kind of need to give yourself a bit of wiggle room, because when you prime them and paint them, if something's too tightly fitting, it will not go together in the end when it's painted. Even if the paint is like ultra thin, and you know, it still sometimes can stop it from going back together. So you got to be a little bit careful. So as you can see, my early attempt at doing the plume, we can compare this to the finished attempt later. I didn't think was very good. Like the hair chunks are really chunky. One of the other things that I do regret a little bit is, and there was no way around it, but having this arm is all glued together. It's not glued onto the body, but it's all glued together, right? So we have the shoulder pad glued on, the arm glued on, the helmet glued on, and it made painting it very difficult to get into some of the crevices and stuff. It was a huge pain. Thanks, Sebastian. I appreciate it. So we're getting pretty close. What I'll say is, at this point, I don't have the lance glued into the hand, as you can see. There is a bit of wiggle room here so that I can, when I'm gluing the model together, get the angle of the lance just right. And I knew it would be the case that with both arms, because they had a little bit of wiggle room, and I kind of built in a little bit of more wiggle room than I thought I would need, because I knew that the bike angle, like as you can kind of see here, right? I'm not holding this in place. This is just, the bike is being held in place right now by the pins, and it is drooping more than it will droop in the final build. So you see his foot is not touching the platform. And because of the fact that I could never really make the whole build fit together, like dry fit together, and be exactly right, like have the bike at the right angle, have the lance at the right angle, I just ended up thinking, okay, well, I'll try and build in like a bit more wiggle room to all the joints, so that when I do go to glue the bike in, I can get that angle set first, and then get the angles of the two arms and the head based on how the bike kind of ends up gluing together. Because it's a bit of an unknown, right? Like you can't really plan for it exactly, because it's going to be, you know, just, it's only got a couple of points of contact with the model. So yeah, that was the vague idea, right? Here we go. We got a video. You can kind of see this is it, quite close to being finished. One thing I'll say, actually, just when let me rotate him back here. So, oh, you can't zoom in here, but basically, you see here on the outside edge, Sammy Paints. Thanks for following, Sam. How you doing? On this exhaust, the exhausts are also pinned onto the bike. I know you don't need to pin them, but I did pin them for extra stability. I'll talk a little bit about it in a sec. I'll see if I've got a photo, actually. Oh, reference. So, 16th of January. This is about when, so we're 6 weeks into the build. This is about when they announced this model. And I was really dead set on switching the head to this head. Because it is so much cooler, I think, than the head I've got, and I would make it into female Custodes. And I love this head. It's amazing, I think, and it made it more of a shield captain. That's the one thing I was kind of annoyed, and you kind of see now I get like into the idea of making it into female Custodes, and I was trying to look for different heads. But essentially, I was sort of like, I like this head. It is nice, and it looks very biker, right? Like he's got the goatee and the mohawk. He looks like a biker guy. But this is just way better, I think. And the other thing was, I kind of envisioned it as a shield captain, but there's nothing really on this in terms of ornamentation that would imply it's a shield captain instead of just a regular Vertus Praetor guy. And so that's why another reason I wanted this wreath was I was like, oh, that kind of, it's like a shield captain wreath. Like it makes it more of a captain. But unfortunately, the pre-order went up the day of entry cutoff at Golden Demon, so I had no way to get the head. Or maybe a week before Golden Demon or something like that. But that's another like little minor regret. I wish I could have used this head. It's just so good. And so yeah, I got this Stormcast head, which is another one of my favorite heads of any like Warhammer kit. I love it. Like this awesome crown. I could have cut this gem off and just made like a nice tiara for her. But the thing is, it's out of scale. And I thought that would be too much to get away with, especially since I do end up making this quite a bit taller. And you know, when I look at it, it doesn't actually look hugely out of scale in this photo, but it is. Like in hand, it's much more noticeably out of scale. But I really would have liked to use this head and do a female Custodes one. I really wanted to, but unfortunately it just it didn't line up that way. And as you can sort of see, like look at that difference in size. Like that is a huge difference in size from this is a Stormcast helmet or Stormcast head versus the head I use. Like that is a massive difference in scale, and I thought it was just too much to get away with in terms of making sure the scale of the piece was right. And sort of you see this is a Space Marine. I can't remember, maybe this is another Custodes head in the middle, I can't remember. Either way, I thought if the proper female Custodes heads come out in time, I will use the Shield Captain head, but if not, I'll just stick with what I got, and that is what I did end up having to do, unfortunately. But next time we can do the Shield Captain, I guess. Okay, so just showing you some sanding. You can see some more amazing, beautiful sculpting of this tailcoat. Look at that. Oh my goodness. How good am I at this whole sculpting thing? So I guess like that is one little bit of advice. Like, I don't know, if you're worried about your own sculpting, just slap on a bunch of putty and get out the sandpaper until it looks good. It's kind of like painting in a way, right? Like I didn't have anything. Like I was following a little bit of like Valbjorn guides. And like we'll chat about Valbjorn again a bit later because he really saved this entry. But you know, for the most part, it was just trial and error my way until it sort of worked out. And this can show you exactly how much that is the case. Another issue with the painting of the build, by the way, was because this is attached to his legs, it made painting underneath the legs very annoying. So we're getting pretty close. I had to try and work out how to make this fold convincing. So here I had the fabric bunched up. I chatted to my friend Sebastian Archer, who's Veiled Lamp on Instagram, at a meetup I had with some other painters, and he sort of mentioned I should try and do this kind of triangular thing because that's kind of a more natural way of the fabric bunching up. And so I just mocked it up with some blue tack to give myself a rough idea of what I was going to aim for. And then I kind of overdid it a little bit and made it like what you can kind of see here is like this fabric, like the sharpness of this fold makes the fabric look really thin here compared to this where the fabric looks really heavy. So the shape was kind of right, but the weight of the material was wrong. So I had to change that, obviously. I had to sculpt these little pipe things, like, I don't know, this webbing, I don't know what it's called, in, you know, the Space Marine torso armor and the Custodes torso armor, because I had to change the scale, right? I made him taller. So as you can see here, the torso normally would sit closer to the belt. And I had to pop it up a bit so that I could make him a bit more upright, and so I had to sculpt in these little webbing bits to make it look correct. And then there's part of the plume is just glued on, right? So this is from another Custodes plume that I just stuck onto the end of what I had sculpted, and then I kind of sculpted them together. So this top plastic part is from the actual kit of the Vertus Praetors. And they have really long plumes. Like when you look at their actual plume, like on the top of their helmet, it's super super long. And so that's why it sort of goes this distance. It goes that long. So how about we have another look, see what we can skip forward to. So here we go. Let's have a look. Here we go. We got a nice photo of Albert and JC, if JC is still around, who came over to my place, and Albert was having a look at the sculpt for a minute. That was nice. He was very positive about it. Oh, hey, Nat, how you doing? Thanks for following. Yeah, look at that. What a man. What a guy. The true legend. So sculpting up the hair now. So we're just trying to connect this top bit of hair to this bottom bit of hair and make it look kind of vaguely natural. And I think I did a pretty shitty job, to be totally honest. Like, this is just terrible. There's a piece of wire around it. I'm just no good at this sculpting of the hair. In the end, it kind of looks okay, but the side, I'll see if I can find a photo of the side of it, because it's just bad, right? Where are we? I think here. Oh no, that's the good one, right? So let's have a look. We can make a comparison. Where are we? Sorry guys, this is real fun viewing. Here we go. So look at this fat bits of hair lines. Like, this is just no good. They're way too chunky, and we end up switching down here to much finer. I basically had to redo the whole thing and give the hair like some actual body and curves. I still think this is not amazing, but like, you know, first attempt at sculpting this hair, like, you can't get it perfect. But I did the best I could, and when you paint it, it covers it up. But again, it's still, I think, one of the major sort of problems with the sculpting on the model, that, you know, again, if I had maybe more time, you know, at this point, it's 4th of February, right? We're less than 2 months until Adepticon, and I'm sort of thinking like I need to just wrap this up and get to painting, because I'm really running out of time. I extended the glove a little bit, just to kind of hide a bit more of this really janky arm joint. So this is one thing where, if you actually look at this in person and try and make sense of this left arm armor, it does not make sense. There's too many panels. There's like an elbow bit here, and then like the actual armor, and then like a little janky bit here, and then the glove, and there's an extra joint that kind of shouldn't be there. But again, it's sort of one of those choices where you've got to kind of make a compromise to make the build work. You know, it worked, I guess, in the end. Here's the sculpting the fingers for the lance arm. Another sort of issue with this is that in the end, one of the regrets I have about the sculpting of this arm is that the fingers don't really look like they're grabbing the lance. They kind of are like floating on top of it, and it's not super convincing. It's kind of convincing enough, again, like the arm, but it's not amazing. And so this is one of those things where, like, if I had to do this again, I would sort of change the position of the fingers. I would try and make them curve a little more. One of the things is, see these little power line things, right? Like power weapon line things. The hand, just because of the positioning of the composition, the hand ended up above them. And so I kind of was stuck in that the hand had to be further away from the main part of the lance. Or I could have drilled this off, right, and shaved it clean. But then I thought this pattern here would look worse. So I left them on, and I think the hand ended up looking a bit worse. So it's kind of like you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't. I didn't really think of a very elegant fix, and I think it could have been a little bit better. So this is Sunny. I'll need to go back and watch the rest of this. When you were sculpting the hair, how did you think about how much texture to actually sculpt in? Yeah, so look, honestly, the thing about it was I used this thing, this hair from another Custodes plume, and really in the end it was just a matter of trying to sculpt the hair to match this sizing of strands, and I did not do a very good job. They move in they're definitely different sizes. They're not uniform at all, and so again, I don't know if you heard, but that was kind of a regret of the piece that I wish I could have done a little bit better. And hello, thanks for tuning in. I definitely was mentioned earlier in the stream taking a nice little chunk of inspiration of your bikers as I was painting my own. And those are the main things about the build. I'm not too sure what else I can say. This is the final picture of the finished build. Those were the main sort of challenges. Like I said, I think ultimately when I look at it, I think you can kind of see a little bit what I was talking about with the fingers, especially at this angle. They don't quite look right, do they? Like this pinky is kind of tilting down a little bit, and this index finger is kind of tilting up a little bit, and they don't really look like the way you would naturally grip a thing. Like if I hold this can, you know, you see this more curves to my fingers. You know, courtesy, shout out Eden Killer Whale Museum. And so, yeah, like, I really kind of regret that a little bit. And also, can you see this line here? I think that is kind of... this ended up proving a huge pain in the ass to paint. It's not super well sculpted. No, it looks the same. Thanks, Zurikita, man. Well, I appreciate it. I think, like, again, this is like... These are minor things that don't really make the piece, like, worse, necessarily. But, like, I think if you're trying to do something as well as it's possible to do it, right? It's just notes for next time. Like, I think you can see even in the sculpting of the hair here, right? Like, it gets thicker in these bottom strands. Like, these are really chunky. And then up here, they're much thinner. And so, yeah, there's just little things like that that I think for next time, it's kind of good to bear in mind. Again, like you can kind of see, look here, it's quite fine and it's quite nice. And then down here, it's sort of a little chunkier. If it was a sculpting competition, they might have looked at it. This is such a good job. It doesn't break it at all. Thanks, man. I agree. Like, ultimately, I'm very happy with how this ended. What I will say is the main problem with some of the sculpting elements is when I actually went to paint it, some of the sculpting really got in the way of my ability to paint it well. So in my opinion, the hair in particular, it was very difficult for me to paint it in a way that looked good because of the way I had sculpted it. This chunk of finger, this little bit here that connects the glove to the fingers as well. Like, these are really small things, but they are in the focal zone of the model, right? Like, this hand is very close to the face. This hair in the plume is very close to the face. And the issues I had with the sculpting of them did, in my opinion, impact in a way that kind of detracts from the painting, or at least made it very difficult for me to paint it well. Yeah, so I think that's the main thing to talk about in terms of the build. Like, that is pretty much the build. Then it is primed. Right, there we go. We have primed the model. Having painted 3 different versions of the plume, I'd say your sculpting is probably more consistent than the GW models. Look, the thing is, Popsicle, right? Like, whether the plumes are consistent across the range, or whether they're consistent across the actual plume itself is kind of the key, right? As long as they're kind of consistent within itself, that's kind of important, I guess. But, you know, it is what it is. I think it worked out okay, but, like, let's switch back to the actual model for a second. Let's have a look. One, I'm not a great... I found it tough to paint red, right? What I would have liked in future, I think, is for this element, where it droops down, to have a much more exaggerated sweep, right? So that it kind of droops down across the leg more, and that would have let me, I think, interpret this volume with more contrast. I could have made it a brighter highlight and then drop into shadow a little more, where because I made it so straight, as you can kind of see from this angle, I feel like I didn't add enough contrast into the, like enough value contrast into the red here, where at the top I quite like it, right? It's quite nice. Alison, from a practical standpoint as a cosplayer, that hair would have been tangled and all over the place in real life. Exactly, right? But so, and then one of the issues with the top of the hair, right, is that we've got this nice sort of ball, and then here it kind of breaks the ball shape and becomes a bit blocky. And so if I could have done it again, I know that it makes it look like it naturally bunches up against the shoulder. That's nice. But it, you know, I would rather have had it look better to paint than look more realistic, right? And so, yeah, from this, oh, sorry, it went off camera. From this angle, it's kind of cool. You know, the way it sort of bunches up against the shoulder. It's just that I wish I could have done it in such a way that I had that, but I didn't have it here. Just, I think it would have been that tiny little thing that would have improved it. I'll mention a few other bits that I didn't take photos of just with the build. I've got my spare bits of Custodes here in the chunk. So this is like, these are the bits boxes I used for making the piece. Chabuto, thanks for following. So this is like the stash. Again, we got our spare bikes. I pinned the exhausts in, so you can kind of see on this bike. This was the first bike I was going to use. So we have a pin here and then here and here, and essentially because the pin that holds the bike up is in the exhaust, I probably didn't need to do this, but I worried that it's not a huge contact point here on the actual kit. It's just a really tiny nub. Do I have one that's not built? Here you go. So you see how it's just a little nub there. I just wanted to have some extra stability, and so there's a pin. There are 3 pins, a thicker one and 2 thinner ones that go essentially all the way through here and out the other end into the other exhaust set. I'm not making another. No way. This is more than enough. One was more than enough. I'm actually not sick of NMM Gold as well, Sebastian. I'm actually quite keen to do another NMM Gold model. I'll chat about the painting in just a little bit, as long as people are still having fun. It's going to be I'm finding myself having a lot more to talk about than I thought, so that's good. Yeah, so pinned it through just to make it nice and stable. Popsicle, in my experience, the exhausts fall off really easy no matter how much you try and glue them. Okay, good. Well, that's good to know. So yeah, so because the main pins go into the exhaust, I wanted to pin them just to have a little bit of extra stability. But the handlebars was one thing I thought is worth mentioning. I'm going to try and find in this giant pile another set of bike handlebars. I should have one somewhere, because they were just a small thing that it bears mentioning. So again, with the lance, right? You guys will zoom in just a tiny bit. With the lance, as you can sort of see, I had to carve off the arm and then leave a little gap. This was the original one I was going to use, and the reason I had to ditch it was I made I got to this point, and then I did a little mistake carving away at the at the Imperial Eagle beak, as you can see, and so I had to restart and make another one. But I did actually toss up whether I should have the plug. You know, you see how it's got that plug for the cable? Thanks for following, Rob. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll leave the plug and just have it like not plugged in. But in the end, I thought it just is a nicer, cleaner look to just have the handle of the lance down the bottom. It is admittedly a little light at the bottom, and I wish there was some more weight I could have added to the bottom. But I don't think it throws off the composition necessarily. But anyway, back to the old... so yeah, I had to get one of these guys. See, just like a bit of handle, because obviously I can't carve like the fingers away from the whole stupid thing. So this is from a Stormcast Vindicta spear. I've got plenty of those spare, and then I just sort of cut it to fit in and whacked it in there. Here we go. You can kind of see I'd started to pin one of these exhausts. I went through a lot of these things in the process of building it. I don't know if I have a... I thought I had a... Oh, here we go. So, on the handlebars, I had to do the same thing here. So essentially, to get all three of the handlebars on the bikes in the kit have a hand on the left handlebar, because they're all holding their lances in the right arm. So unfortunately I couldn't have mixed and matched the handles. So what I had to do was cut the handle off, cut this top part of the handlebar off, like the little nubbin thing, because these are asymmetrical. Like it wouldn't have worked if I had just taken one of the right handlebars off and put it on the left, because they kind of have the wrong angles. So I had to cut the thing just here and here, and then put this top nub on another piece of like this stuff, this cloth stuff. So essentially, like I had to take a right handlebar, cut the nub off the top, and take the nub from the left handlebar, put it on the webbing stuff from the left one, and then whack it on the other side. So anyway, all that is to say, like, that was actually one of the more annoying things to do, because all these bits were so small, they were really hard to hold and get in place. Sebastian asked, let me put the model just in shot while I read a question. I'm curious your thoughts on, but I feel like brown and NMM golds and bronzes are somewhat easier to paint convincingly than silver. And I think part of that is convincing silvers have to have more... yeah, I agree, Sebastian. I feel like I'm, generally speaking, better at painting gold than painting silver, because gold is a color. Like the non-metallic gold is a color, and the non-metallic steel is much more dependent on the environment or the atmosphere. Now, generally speaking, when a lot of people paint silver non-metallics in Warhammer scale, they don't really worry about putting that much environmental reflection in it. They just kind of do it recipe style, where it's like a gray gradient, and maybe it gets a bit warmer or a bit cooler based on if it's facing the ground or if it's facing something else or whatever. But it doesn't really look like steel or silver a lot of the time. It kind of just looks, like it has the hallmarks of silver, but it doesn't really look silver. And to be honest, I actually think that's the case with a lot of my steel. In these exhausts, I'm not super happy with them. I think they're a bit average. This bit, I don't mind the ammo thing, but like a lot of these little nubbins, admittedly, some of the contrast is getting blown out a little bit by my camera right now, just because I think I'm a bit close to the light. The best bit of the non-metallics that I think are on the model are on the tip of the lance, which I was very happy with, just here. Sorry, the autofocus is going a little wild. Let's have a look at it. Sorry. There. So I was very happy with this bit of non-metallics silver, because I just painted like some cool reflections. Oops, sorry, we're kind of losing focus. It's getting a bit blown out as well. But anyway, yeah, so I definitely found it easier to paint gold than paint there we go. Then painting silver. So one other thing about the build, I guess, I drilled holes in the exhausts, because they're kind of weird in the kit. I drilled holes in these ones as well. Here, you can kind of see. This is not very conducive to painting. Like, what are you going to do with the flat space? You're just going to paint it black? Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I just I kind of shaved this lip off the end, and then drilled a hole in them, just so they would look a bit nicer. Sorry. I think that's about all I can really say right now, all that I can think of about the build. unless anyone has a question about anything. But again, that is pretty much the build. We're now ready to paint. I'll talk you guys through the painting. I guess there's not as much to say about the painting really. I think the coolest thing everyone seems to like about this model is really putting it together, the build of it. Alrighty, we're back. Hello. I got my my props ready. So chatting painting now, I guess. See you, Seb. Rob, hello. How you doing? Thanks for joining. So I should say, there's sort of two central ideas. The whole reason I made this piece were built around. One of them was that I thought it would be really cool to have a floating bike, and then the other one was I thought that a lot of people, when they paint this non-metallic gold on an entirely non-metallic gold model, they kind of, I don't know if you miss a trick maybe, but having the gold look like it's all one material, I think just kind of sometimes makes all gold models look too busy. And so I wanted to try and experiment with this idea of having like a material difference between the gold of his armor and then the gold that's used to accent the armor. So on the collar, on the eagle, versus on the actual panels of the armor on the model. The other thing is that the reason I thought this would work as an all NMM model, excuse me, is that the biker does not actually have a crazy amount of gold on him, right? He's got pants, he's got a tailcoat, he's got a belt, he's got leather boots, this plume. Like, there's a lot of elements on this compared to a normal Custodes or a Stormcast that are not gold, and I thought that would really help with the focus, right? And so the general idea was that I wanted to make the accent gold, so you know, your collars, your big chunky eagles and stuff like that, to be really shiny and warm gold, and almost like not even necessarily gold, like maybe even closer to like a rose gold or like a reddish kind of gold. I'm gonna bring up just this example from this model by one of the goats, Richard Gray, and this was a big inspiration for the gold on my figure, the accented gold, right? And it's this thing here, this thing, and I think this is just really beautiful. This kind of really warm gold. It's really lovely, and I wanted this to be this was a big inspiration for what I did. So let's just have a little read of some of these comments. Sorry. So immediately wanted to ask about the wing facing the audience. Why that pattern of design or reflections? Yeah, I'll come back to that, because that, in my opinion, is probably one of the weakest points of the entire model. So is it static or is it stake? I don't know. I can't read all the letters in your name. But as I was saying, I found it easier to paint gold than silver. One problem I have is that I find it easier to do the classic fantasy orange, brown, yellow, gold. Once greenish tones come in, I really struggle to balance them and find the right colors and paints. What kind of tones do you use? I really like the combination of green and orange on the model and want to study and replicate it on another model someday. Thanks. Well, thanks for the question. So essentially, you know, what you're kind of gesturing at is essentially part of the reason I wanted to do this. And in terms of tones I used, right? Like I said, Richard Gray's, whoa, what's going on there? Back. Richard Gray's horsey man, vampire horse guy, wherever it is. This was certainly an inspiration for the gold. But generally speaking, the concept of a really warm gold was the main thing, right? Warm gold that is more orange and more red on the accented details, because those colors naturally pull your attention more, and then a more desaturated yellow, green, brown, whatever. Like, there's a lot more closer to green colors in the brushed metal. And so that was the other thing. It was the idea of like a brushed metal finish on the armor panels that was more matte and less reflective, and then a really shiny, like much more blinged out, super polished gold in the eagle. Hello, hello. I assume that is Content. How you doing? Did I pronounce your name in any way close to the way it should be pronounced? I'm gonna hope so. So obviously, as you can see, sort of right, like in here in this area, you can see like I've made this little bit and these little wings like much more reflective of the red than this brushed metal, right? That's the general idea, right? And I think that when you sort of zoom out, I feel like with the reds and then with the focal golds, you know, it's still, you know, the big sort of balancing act with this piece was obviously not just the physical balancing of the bike, but it was also the fact that this bike is so gigantic. How do we paint it in a way where the bike is not the first thing you look at, right? Because it's so big and it's so golden, but we still want to be looking here first, right? We want to be looking at the face, so the face is still nice and super bright, not very close, but good enough. Okay, good. But we've got like nice red and nice warm colors in the gold. So essentially, that was the idea. So Richard Gray was one of the big inspiration. Another one was, and it's kind of stupid, but was these pens that I have, and they're just like little pens that they gave to us free from Crimson Brush and from Guilds Inn. And they have this kind of like coppery, like rose gold, like fake metal plating on them. I don't know if it's kind of hard to see in this light, but they're really nice. And like when they actually like reflect one another, like look at how crazy saturated like this color is when they're like reflecting one another. Like this is crazy. They're so shiny and they're so bright. And I really liked that. So I had these on my desk. There were a few main sort of references. Like we like to talk about references with painting. We are painting stuff that should be real. So main references were these pens, my Anko cutlery, that's sort of gold from Kmart, and with these bits of brass sheet that I used in the sculpting, right? So you can kind of see, like, look at that difference in like reflective materiality, right? Like look how much more specular the gold, quote unquote, is on this pen than this piece of brass sheeting. Like this is quite matte in comparison. I also have my trusty water bottle, which is like a nice brushed metal, and that's always a good one to look at. And so yeah, a lot of the time we're looking at, like, you know, you look at like these different curves and like how warm they get when they reflect on each other. Like look at this, like that compared to this gold like reflecting in on itself, like it gets so orange. It's just wild, you know. Like, and so this is some of the stuff I wanted to bring into the model. Also on this brass sheet, right? Well, like, I mean, look at on the inside of this thing, like when it's just the light is just bouncing around and they're getting more and more saturated. But also, like when you hold these things up next to each other, like what the reflections start looking like. You know, like look at the pen lid reflecting in the brass sheeting. And so these were like some of the things I just sort of had on hand that were kind of informing the choices for the color scheme for the gold. Well, JC, you know, we got to shout out you and I assume Timbo for giving us these pens at I assume Timbo did them, I assume, for Guilds and for Crimson Brush, because without them, you know, I don't know if this piece would have worked out. So good stuff. And so essentially the idea is that in our super reflective gold, we have a ton of color variation. Now, it might be hard to see. I might actually bring up a photo. Okay, well, I'll thank Timbo again when I see him at the next meetup. Surely the pens were made this way to inspire people. Exactly. So let's go back to some photos. Let's have a look here at our primed model. We did a white undercoat for the miniature and a black undercoat for the base. Now, this obviously does, this is grey, I guess, with black, whatever. This is just really like Mr. Hobby finishing surfacer that I didn't sand off totally. And another real shonky finish to this build is because I had to spray and sand and filler this base a bunch of times. These skulls have quite a bit of physical texture build up from the primer if you see them in person, and I kind of just hope they wouldn't notice that very much. But hey, that's why it's bronze and not higher, right? Because it's a bit shonky in a few areas. So crafting pens to win Golden Demons, exactly. So a few references. We got some official Custodes artwork. This is from a book I have, like an Art of 40k book. Just getting some ideas. I did worry a little bit. So like I could talk a lot about like the things that I thought were quite risky on this piece. Like one of them was the general idea of like the two-tone gold was like, to my mind, quite risky in like two senses. One was that it might just not work, right? I might do it and it just doesn't look good. And then the other was that I was kind of worried that because there's no examples of that in their armor in the lore or any official artwork, will they just cook me out of contention for a demon because it's not an official enough scheme? And so another bit of GD myth busting there. Like, you do not have to follow the stock scheme exactly. Just has to look convincingly Warhammer, in my opinion. In my opinion, it is not accurate from a lore perspective at all. I just think it looked good. And I think that they obviously thought it looked good enough and was lore accurate enough in that it was gold, that it did not knock it out of contention. Because as far as I'm aware, there's only 3 official Custodes color schemes that are lore accurate. And that's the Shadow Wardens and the other guys and the gold ones, right? So like the black one, the sort of cream one, and the normal one. And this is kind of not any of them, right? Like, you know, you look at like this artwork, you know, it's not anything close to what my guy is, right? Like my guy is sort of a fair bit different in terms of the tonality of the gold. So I think that there were plenty of examples of lore, like maybe not lore breaking, but like lore boundary pushing color schemes that still win Golden Demons as long as they are kind of Warhammer faithful. Yeah, so there you go. I think just make it faithful to Warhammer, even if it's not 100% lore accurate, and you'll do all right. I mean, I shouldn't be giving out advice because I've only been to one Golden Demon, but that's at least how I approached it, and it kind of paid off. So some other examples of just some non-metallics. These are from Dave Colwell. Obviously, this is nice and gold. This is nice and silver. Here we got some color picking. I did also have a big sheet of copper. Here we go, that I used as a bit of reference. So just doing some color picking to get some rough ideas. So g'day Austin, how you doing? No worries, Sam, I'll catch you on the next one. So I just had some color picking, and this is the general idea of the two tones, right? We've got a warm, this is quite close to copper, like rose gold kind of gold, versus our like desaturated greenish gold. And obviously it doesn't end up quite so extreme as it does in these references in the actual model. But what I was doing here was just trying to see like how these materials reflect in on themselves. Like if you look at, see where this folds, and then on the inside it's reflecting itself, and like look how much warmer it gets compared to the sort of like local color, quote unquote, of this sort of brass. And obviously like this is reflecting my room, which is just white walls. But yeah, so there's an idea. First palette, right? We're getting started. So we've got our sort of our desaturated gold, and then our sort of like, you know, this sort of, I think it's pastel peach kind of color, I think from AK, was a big part of painting the non-metallics. So just looking at a few more references, like We had Arnau's crazy Ascalion. Like, I really love the way he does these insane, like, just glorious fucking reflections. It's just wild. And like, we've got the more green reflecting the sky, and then the more warm, like when it reflects either the ground or itself. So yeah, you know, we love to see it. Some more like bits of gold. I really liked this from Richard Gray again. This this eagle wing thing, very, very cool. And this from a Tyrannid. So yeah, lots of stuff that I was trying to draw from. Here you can see sort of the palette. Thanks for joining, JC. I'll catch you next time. These colors are some of the main colors for the warm gold. And we're good to go. You can kind of see it start to evolve quite early on. So this is, I think when did we start painting? Let's look at what was the first day? I think this was the first day painting, 7th of February. There you go, first day painting. Oh no, 6th of February. There you go. Up until literally at Adepticon, so that's how long it took. So from fairly early on, thanks for following Nas Daddy 1. So from fairly early on, I was quite happy with the material difference, right? It was an undertone of this sort of like blackish red color on the warm gold. And then this sort of like brownish, like really desaturated green, like yellow green as the sort of brown yellow green undertone of the armor plating. And then obviously like a big part of what would sell the effect would be like how I do the reflections and stuff. And so the decision for this triangle shape here was that, again, like we needed the focus to stay on the face, right? When this whole thing's together, my thinking was that this shape, this triangle shape, in conjunction, in addition to like the really high value skin tone on the face, like bright pale skin, would kind of be just like a big box, right? And it's like sort of surrounded by all this warm gold and this red. And I think that even if I made this Aquila, my thinking was even if I made this Aquila, like this eagle, really, really strong and cool and interesting, that square would just be strong enough that the focus would stay on the face, even when the whole bike was painted in crazy non-metallics and stuff. And essentially, like early on, I mapped out that shape and then sort of started adding more and more and more as we went on. One of the biggest issues I had with the piece was the materiality of the brushed metal, the texture of it. Like trying to paint in these tiny lines was tedious, but it was not unfun. It was still fun, but it was very difficult, and it was very, very easy to find myself like drifting in scale in your texture marks. And so I think that's like a big thing when you're painting texture, especially at this scale, is that even if the scale is not in line with reality, right? Like when you think about like what the texture of brushed metal is, like if I look at this spoon, can you guys see, like, you can see the lines of the brushed metal, right? The idea that a line that is that thin would be in any way visible when it is like scaled to the size of this bike is ridiculous, right? But you know, you just kind of make it look kind of convincing and then try and make the scale consistent, and that's sort of how I thought about it. And yeah, it was a pain. We sort of mapping out more, I think, from fairly early on. Again, this is just a bit of a rough sketch. You can kind of see this tonality of the color, I think, of the brushed metal is pretty right. It's pretty right. Like, it's pretty correct, I think. And so I was pretty happy from the start in terms of like whether this would work. I should also mention, just for what it's worth, my initial kind of idea was that I would do the warm gold as a combination of non-metallic and true metallic paint. I'd been throwing this idea around in my mind, like, and heard that, you know, like things like Maxime on his ogre that won Best of Painting at Monty had done some mix of non-metallic and true metallic painting on the giant sword that the ogre is holding. If you don't know what model I'm talking about, if you look up The Secret Workshop on Instagram, you'll see it. And he had painted it with a combination of non-metallic and true metallic, and I thought that it would be another nice contrast to have between the two different types of gold would be to have the more focal gold be actually painted partially with true metallics. But I did not have enough time to work it out. And so one of the biggest problems I had with this entire piece was I was just too crunched for time. I mean, it's 13th of February, and admittedly, like, that still gives me 2 months to paint the figure, but I'm not a real expert at painting non-metallics. I always had considered them a weak point in my painting. And so a lot of painting this model was sort of trial and error and sort of learning on the job to try and make it good. And I thought if I then also added the idea of trying to get this balance between like non-metallic and true metallic right, it would just not work out. I wouldn't have enough time to do it. And yes, I am certainly aiming for more relaxing projects for the next few months. I think it's not until I do my piece for Monty that I'll do anything super stressful. So we just got more references for some marble here that I end up using later, and this, which was painted I think by Banshee. So I will say I think it was a weak point early on. I definitely think I'm better at it now than I used to be, for sure. Thanks for following Nev Paints. Hello. Yeah, I think I've gotten a lot better at painting gold specifically than I used to be. So we got the plinth wrapped up. I ended up just putting some black tape over the yellow tape because it was throwing off my vision of the piece. As we go along in some of these whips, so as you can kind of see, 17th of February, right? I've only been painting for less than 2 weeks, and we've got the rough color composition of the entire piece blocked in. This is how I like to paint now. I have no idea how some of these maniacs can just choose like one little part of the model and then paint it to completion, and then another little part of the model and paint it. That's crazy to me. I kind of need to do the whole thing together in a way. What I like to do is like essentially get this idea of the color composition of the piece roughly together, right? And then I start refining more and more. So you can kind of see like the focal point has had more refinement than some of the outer points. Thanks, Cryo. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And you can kind of see like this bit here was exactly, this bit in the lance was almost exactly what I wanted in terms of the color. And I was super happy with that. This was like the first bit on the model where I was like, oh man, I'm cooking with gas here. And I really liked this one little bit. Yeah, man, I'm keen to catch up at Monty. I feel like I barely saw you at World Expo because, you know, that was certainly an experience. But yeah, at Monty, we'll hang out, my friend. It was absolutely a huge pain to paint the cloak and boots fully assembled. It was a massive pain. But there was no way around it just because I had to build it this way, right? Like there was no way around it, unfortunately. So got the color composition in place, and then I started painting the spear. So early on, I was going to have a difference in the two reflections. I was going to have like a cooler and a warmer one. And the idea with that was that I would have it cooler at the top and warmer, like, you know, cooler periphery, warmer as it gets closer to the focal zone. And it was tough to sort of conceive of the spear, the non-metallics for the spear, because I wanted it to be a real like point of quality, but it's not in the focal point of the model enough that if you go too ham on the painting there, it's just really distracting. And so also, for what it's worth, that's kind of why it is positioned this way, right? If it was positioned with the flat of the blade out more, obviously it looks more natural this way too. But also, because it's narrower, at sort of the golden angle, you can't see as much of the blade. And so it's hopefully sort of not too distracting. But that was one of the main things I focused on, right? And I'm a big fan of Thibaut Ram's NMM, where he has this sort of like, I think of it as like liquidity in the metallic. And there's all these like runs, and like you can see like all these little jagged runs, and they make everything look super polished and shiny. And that was like his painting is a big inspiration when I was doing these. I think he's a really wonderful non-metallic painter. He's a really great style of non-metallics. And so the idea was this would be like almost silvered, right? Like, and the reflection on this doesn't really make sense. This shape that it has, essentially the idea is, I'll just go back to the actual piece. But the idea is that at the main angle, you have, sorry, it's a little, maybe a tiny bit blown out. I might just change the exposure real quick. A little bit. No? What are we doing? Here. There we go. A little darker. So it was to have these reflections, right, at this angle where you can see the light, hopefully like pointing down, you know? Does that make sense to you guys? Like, we've got like these bright reflection points at the top, and then down here, and then these bright reflection points on the edge, and then it's sort of a broader highlight here. And so the idea is that hopefully they're kind of leading you downwards towards the focal point, right? So that even if you're wanting to really like zoom in and look close at the blade, you're still kind of, you know, always coming back to the model. And I don't know if it was 100% effective, but that was the general idea behind what I was trying to get at with choosing the reflections like this. I think if I hadn't blocked it, see this big chunk of dark, the idea with this was that if the whole thing was too bright, again, it would just be too much high value outside of the focal point. And so I was generally happy with the shape, the idea of the highlight here, but yeah, it just took some refining to get the rough all the color and stuff dialed in. So you can kind of see as it goes along, I'm sort of trying to add more color to these like little bright spots. And I actually think this is one of my favorite parts of the whole model, is this this blade. So let's have a look here, like as it's going along. So trying to get, whoa, sorry, what's going on? Okay, sorry. So at about the midpoint, you know, these little like rainbow spots in the reflection, like some chromatic aberration, or whatever it's called. And then some gold in the spear, and then eventually what I did was, it's quite hard to tell unless you look really close, but the finished product is like the wire is the sort of more desaturated gold, and then the little bulbs are the warmer gold. Let's have a look at sort of it a little further along. Here we go. Yeah, so this is pretty much it pretty close to done. And yeah, there you go. You can kind of see the gold a little better. That's it at a flat. I think it still looks good here, but the reflections kind of make a little less sense. But yeah, essentially, oh, there you go. You can see the palette for painting the gold. This, sorry, painting the blade. This was the palette for painting the blade. So we've got all our silvery colors, and then we've got some gold for doing the gold wire. And then these inks down the bottom here we use to do the chromatic aberration. There we go. More forks. Yeah, that's it. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. There we go. All right. So I think we're getting to a point where like these are the main things I have to talk about, right? So here we go. A bit more sketching on the model. One of the things I can say is like on the bike, it's very easy to paint some parts of this and conceive of the gold reflections in some parts, right? So along this line, obviously very easy to highlight, along this line, very easy to highlight here, on the saddle, on the, this, whatever this thing is, on this top fin even, on the inside line. What was very difficult to conceive of a way to paint non-metallics was on these flat surfaces. And in my opinion, this is probably the weakest single point of the entire model, except for maybe parts of the base, which I'm not a huge fan of, or at least I think I could have improved. But this flat of the wings, and on the wings on the back as well, and on the top of the bike, I could not think of really interesting ways to fill the space that still looked metallic. As you can see, by the way, how I was sketching it. I was just doing the main angle, and then these are my other two main viewing angles, and they took a little bit longer to sketch out. But I found it, very difficult to conceive of a way to paint those non-metallic surfaces in a way that looked interesting. And I don't think I quite got there. I think that is kind of, like I said, a big weakness in the model. You see we're starting to sketch in the more reflective gold on the eagle. But essentially, really what I think, it was tough. And I think that I don't know what there's some things I could have done, but at the time at least, I really found it difficult to conceive of a better way to paint these flat surfaces than to do some basically some reflections that supported the movement of the composition, even if they didn't look realistic. And that's kind of why I ended up with some of the weird wavy patterns, is I thought that compositionally they supported the model, but they didn't really make sense ultimately, right? And they changed quite a bit, right? So here's a bit more painting. We're now at the 12th of March, right? So we skip forward maybe 3 weeks. We've got some elements fully painted, like the lance is basically 100% complete. A lot of the body is very close to being done. But the bike is the thing that's causing us a lot of drama. So we've got the center of the bike is actually getting quite good, but it's this top part here and these wings that were just causing me a huge amount of grief, and I don't know if I was ever really able to convincingly fix them. And so you can kind of see here this sort of pattern I thought was supported the overall composition, right? It's got this nice line that mirrors the line of the fin, right? And then it kind of sweeps in toward the figure. This bottom one is it's just about filling the space. And so when I'm painting a larger scale figure, I found it much easier to conceive of ways to fill the space on non-metallics, but there's just so much non-metallic surface on this model that I just really found it incredibly difficult. So we can go to the outside edge. And this is where I think the lines get a bit wacky. If you want another thing that is kind of quote unquote wrong with the model, is these back fins are actually on backwards. I put them the wrong way around, and I was tossing up whether I should break them off and fix them and put them the right way around, because I was worried that again it would be an imperfection or an incorrect element of the build. Literally these fins are around the wrong way, and it would just cook me out of contention. But again, it didn't matter. So there's another thing, you can literally make a mistake with getting things the right way around in your build, and if it's kind of the rest of it's good enough, hopefully the judges can kind of ignore it. Or what I suspect is the case, the judges didn't notice because it doesn't really look massively different this way around versus the right way around. But anyway, yeah, so I indeed, we do love a backwards fin. And so again, if we look at the reflections on this wing and this top wing, I feel compositionally they support the piece, right? They kind of are there to hopefully guide your attention around the model in the right way, but I think they're just not convincing as metal. They don't quite look right. And the problem I had was that, like, the way this metal would really be if it was all the right material would be the same as this nose cone gold, right? It's just fairly uniform. It would just be kind of like a mid-tone, and the edges would be brighter. But I thought if I painted it too flat, it would just look wrong. I don't know if I'm kind of explaining myself super well there, but you know, you see like on this bit of the saddle, or near the saddle, I don't know what this is called, the pommel, I guess, I don't know, how it's kind of just one color and the edges are brighter, right? I feel like that would be the more like quote unquote correct way to paint this material of gold, but I was just convinced for whatever reason that if I did that, it would look bad. And I think that was ultimately maybe a bit of a miss in the painting, and I think that was probably one of the main things that stopped it doing better. We got a bit more painting on the face. We block out the colors pretty intensely on his little head. These are phone pictures, and my phone is not great at capturing really small things, so it looks a bit janky. Apologies for that. A tip for painting competition-y stuff, wrap the model up for handling. So this is just glad wrap masking taped in so that I don't rub off paint when I'm handling it. The annoying thing about the glad wrap though is you then can't see elements you've already painted, and if you're someone like me, I really kind of need to see the whole model at all times to try and paint accurately, so I kind of need to remove the glad wrap often as well. Freshly milled surfaces do have those wavy reflections sometimes. Well, thanks, Cryo. I feel like still, even if they might work like quote unquote in reality or whatever, either way, I just feel like aesthetically they're jarring compared to the rest of the model. The flat surfaces by far the hardest to figure out, and I'm not sure what is the best way to make them look good. I'm not either, and I think I got close, but I don't think I got all the way there. So here we got a nice close-up of the focal point. Like, I think this gives you a nice look at this gold, this more warm gold. Yeah, I think you're right, Popsicle, that yeah, in real life it's flat, but what sells it as metal is the color changes a lot when you change angles, for sure. I think like that's one of those things where, like, if I had 6 months to paint this model, well, one, I don't know if I would have been able to have the endurance to paint a model, like one model for 6 months, just in terms of painting. Like, this whole project took 4 months, but I wasn't painting for 4 months. I was painting for sort of like 7 weeks. But anyway, yeah. Thank you, Loku. I appreciate you saying you liked it. I do think, we'll look at a photo of it at the end, and I do think it's kind of, even if it's not necessarily like wrong or right, I think it just could have been better. And I think it's like, to my mind, when I look back on the piece, I think it's got really high points, and then there are just some elements where they're like only okay. And I thought that the flat surfaces on the fins and on the hood of the bike were areas where it was only okay. And it could have been, it kind of needed to be better to be like the ultimate version of itself. It was, I kind of think of it as, it's the best version of itself that I could ever make, but it's maybe not like the ultimate maxed out best possible version of itself in terms of the sculpting, in terms of the painting, even the composition. There's always areas you can improve. I'm still super happy with it, but I just try to be realistic about like the elements I can improve if I want to go into the next piece and make it even better. If that makes sense to all of you guys watching along. So I think just talking about this warm gold sort of really quickly, I have a lot more color variation here, right? You can see a lot more really saturated, like red and orange. In the shadows, like in this line that points right into his face, there's actually like some green. There's green down here as well. It might be hard to see on the stream, but in reality, it is there. And then with the other gold, right, like the flatter gold, we have sort of slightly desaturated but still warm reflections. If you look under his arm, there is even like some green here, and like some desaturated orange and red in the reflections here and here. But obviously, like you look at the amount of color in the reflections in the warm gold versus the brushed metal. The idea was to have a big difference between the two. And then we got to the actual eagle. So this is where, like, in retrospect, I feel like I should have put even more time in the model into. I feel like even at this stage in the painting, like, we're getting some nice blingy gold. I went really overboard with like how reddish the reflections get, how orange they get in the air elements where like the gold is bouncing off itself. But what I was trying to do, by the way, like you want to see the difference between like a good quality camera and your mobile phone. I think that is a good example of it. Like this is just my mobile phone. It still looks nice here. But like, I think there's a big difference in the depth between the two photos there. Thanks, Joe. It is my favorite part of the painting as well. So yeah, here we go. Here's a palette for the gold for painting the eagle. So on the right hand side, we've got our main colors. So we've got these sort of like, I think this is like XV88 or something from Games Workshop. We've got golden brown from AK. I think this is pastel peach from AK. This is warm yellow from Chimera. We got some ivory from AK. We got some white schminky, some schminky white. And then we got some burnt umber. We got some violet. We got our desaturated golds just in small piles over on the left, and a ton of orange and red all over the joint. There's a nice little zoom in. So here we go. This is the 20th of March. So I think at this stage I'm leaving in 5 days. If you'd like to know how phoned in, or maybe not phoned in is the right word, but how fucking blitzed through the base I was, this is the state when I think I left on the 25th. Is that right? Yeah, I think I left on the 25th. And this is what the base looks like 5 days out. When I was painting in the lines of the reflections, was I imagining something specific in the environment, or were they all reflecting, or is it shaped primarily for what is useful to the composition? Popsicle, it is generally speaking compositional rather than environmental, but it's both, right? So the broad reflections, so this is something that like I have tried to get better at with this piece specifically, is that the broad reflections, like the main reflections, obviously are indicative of our light source, right? So hopefully you can kind of see that there is a consistent light source, like from the reflections on the torso and the reflections on the eagle. Like they are hopefully, and in the lance, right, they are hopefully roughly coming from the same direction, right? But when it's at this scale and everything's really tiny, I think you can really get away with playing with the reality of the light a lot more than I think you can with a large scale figure. I think in a large scale figure, because they're bigger, you kind of have to make things look more realistic, where with something smaller, there's a lot of elements where the reflections don't really make sense, right? So if you look at the gold of the eagle, right, the main light is hitting here, yeah? And because of the shape of it, like the three-dimensional shape of it, it might be easier to show you this on the actual model even. But, so our main light is hitting here, right? Which also hits here because these elements are kind of perpendicular to the light at the same angle. But back here, they are nowhere near, they should be nowhere near as bright if I'm following like the rules of real lighting. But compositionally, I thought that I wanted a real movement of this lighting to sweep toward the focal point, because if it was too high value really far out in the periphery of the model, right, toward the edge, obviously this is a key detail, right, of the model, so we need to make it look really good. But if this was just super bright and this was quite dark, as it probably should have been, like it should have gotten brighter because these do curve outwards, but when you look at it, they're still quite flush to the vehicle, so they definitely would not pick up nearly as much light in reality as these areas. But the value on them is very similar, like the brightness on them is very similar. And so the idea with that was that to kind of like trail, you know, the brightness back toward the focal point, right, to create like a little bit of a bridge. And again, like, I don't know, like I feel like more experienced painters would kind of be able to do this stuff better. But that was kind of my thinking, was that if I had done it entirely in a way that conforms to reality, you know, it wouldn't have looked as good, right? And ultimately, like, we're not just doing an exercise in painting real life, right? We kind of have to bend that when it's more aesthetically pleasing, you know. And it's the same on this part, right? So the idea was that from this angle, for the most part, the light is going to be hitting it straight on. Like if I'm viewing it squared up to me, it's coming. The light is sort of straight on, right? And so like in some areas, it's kind of like that, right? Like here on this cone, but and here at the top, this is like the light is bouncing straight into your face, you know, here. Then we start to fudge it a little bit, right? Here, see this circle. If the light was hitting this Adeptus Mechanicus bit in the same way, like in reality, in the same way that it's hitting this cone, the reflection would not be here. But the idea with the reflection here was that it still kind of points towards the focal point, and another focal point here, which is the head and the helmet and the actual figure itself. No worries, man. Thanks for joining, Quentin. Sorry, I'll work out your pronunciation one day. But and so again, like here, right, on the exhaust, you know, if the light is perpendicular to you as a viewer, as it is here, right, on this nose cone, and here on the flat of the bike, then the light on this exhaust should actually be a little further down and a little closer to like perpendicular to you as a viewer. And the reason I moved it up a bit was again to try and you can see like here on the, like this part here on the saddle, right? Can you see this little element? This is closer to like where the correct spot is, and this is kind of a little bit higher. And again, these are just like small, like, I guess, decisions that I'm making that are like, nothing is really massively wrong, like, as in, wrong is the wrong word, but nothing is like massively out of place in terms of where the light might hit, but it's not exactly right. And so, but it kind of adds to the composition, I think. And so that's kind of, those are the guiding thoughts behind placing the light where it was. So again, yeah, 20th of March, and that was the figure. And we have 5 days to go, so we really had to pull some long nights. This is how I painted the arm. It was very hard to hold, so I had it blue tacked onto this little fidget keycap I got from Neko Galaxy. Palette for painting red, lots of red, obviously. The marble, like this marble was a big issue in that it's not very good. It is a little better than this in the finished product, right? but I think it was never particularly strong. So let's have another look at like doing red. So we're stippling the cape. Now my initial plan was to do freehand on this as well, to do like some little swirly lines. You know how they have those little filigree things? And I was going to do a filigree pattern in freehand gold on the cloak at the bottom here on each side. So it kind of pointed upwards just here. But I ran out of time and didn't have enough to do it. Oops. Here's the top. I was quite happy with this when I painted it. I think that looks quite cool. What else can we talk about? Richard Gray started painting this, which was cool, but obviously very different to mine. Thank you for following, Sir Cerbera the Third. Hello. So what else are some big things I can talk about? So I'll chat about the base real quick, and then I'll chat about breaking the stupid model. This is quite close to finish. This is literally, I think, the day before I left on the 24th. I'm pretty sure I left on the 25th. So this is like 5 p.m. and you can kind of see like there's a lot on the base that I still have to do. I was essentially planning to make the marble very colorful. And I had these really grand plans for what to do with the marble, and I just really ran out of time. And I feel like what kind of saved me at Golden Demon in a way was the fact that I think a lot of people don't paint stone or marble in Warhammer models particularly well. And so it just kind of has to gesture at what you're aiming for, right? Rather than looking realistic. There are people who paint realistic rocks. If you look at Sten Froden's open Golden Demon winning piece from Essen, which was what's that, Cities of Sigmar Marshal on a horse. He's got like rocks on that just look amazingly realistic for like Warhammer scale model. But there's a lot of entries where you look at them and like a lot of really great Warhammer pieces where like the rock doesn't really look like rock. It looks well painted and there's a lot of painting in there and there's a lot of depth, but it doesn't look like rocks. And so that's kind of the pivot I made, was that like I had originally wanted to make this marble, or to try to make the marble quite convincing, but I just was unable to with the time I had. I would have needed a lot more time. And so I just settled for making it look like I've put effort into it, and there's color and there's variety and there's interest, but I knew I just wouldn't have the time to make it look real. And so I'm quite keen to try this again and make it look more realistic, because as you can see, like it ends up, I think, more painted than this, but it's not amazing here. And so where are we? I think these are getting towards the last photos I have of the model. This is on my phone before I damaged it. So you can see here, when this is at this point, the model is glued in, right? So the bike is glued to the figure, and there's a gap here, which I had to fill and then paint over. Because obviously getting the angle of the bike, see, here you go, it's glued, fully glued, yay. This was a nice milestone. It happened in the morning of the day that I was leaving. So didn't end up with a ton of time for errors. Luckily, this was what I thought was the most important part to get right. And it went right, and I was over the moon because everything was holding up. It was great. It was the perfect angle, and then I still cooked it. This is what happened, right? So at this point, 6 a.m. on the 25th of March, I think, is when I went to bed that night. And then I woke up like 2 hours later and painted, through the night without sleeping. I finished the model, and when I went to glue it together, this is what happened. So the foot got stuck this close to the base. Yeah. So I put too much super glue in the hole, and when I went to insert the model in, it got stuck. Literally, what's that? Less than maybe 5 millimeters from the foot hitting the base, and it would not move. It could not come out. It was literally just set rock solid. at this time, it is 8:30 in the morning on the day I'm leaving, and my flight was at midday. I was leaving for the airport in 2 hours. And this is, genuinely speaking, one of the worst moments in my life was painting this thing for so long and then having this, the easiest thing, just putting the pin in the hole and gluing it to the base, went wrong. It was truly a waking nightmare. I had to wake up my partner Claire, who is Claire Cowder in the chat, and get her to pack my suitcase for me because I hadn't had time to pack. I painted through the night, was leaving in a couple of hours, and I still hadn't packed. So she was packing as I got out my saw and had to saw through the foot. I was very close to just calling it. I was very close to just saying, I'm not going to enter. I'll just go to Adepticon and have a fun time. But it's an expensive flight from Australia, as you might imagine. So I'm getting the saw. As you can see, this is the give that it has. I had to saw through this. The idea was that I tried to... There's not many photos of this because I was a bit too emotional to worry about taking photos at the time. I wish I'd taken more in retrospect because, you know, it'd be nice to share them. But the choice was like, I tried to cut it as close to the base as I could so that there'd be at least a little bit of a nub on the foot if I could get the model back in. But as you can imagine, once I've sawed it off, like, there's not much pin left, like, and there's a big pin in there that I can't get out. And so essentially I'm getting my power drill and I'm breaking a ton of drill bits, like literally mangling the metal. What time is it here? 11:30? There you go. 11:30? How's that right? Oh, this is at the airport. I don't know how that makes sense. Maybe I copied the picture. And so, yeah, so this is literally right before I left to the airport. I have to mangle this thing to try and get the brass out of the hole so that there's enough room to actually put the model in, because I needed to put the model goes in this spot to get the composition right. I slipped with my drill and see this eagle, I smashed it off. The whole thing came off the base. That's why there's a big crack here, so I had to glue that back on and repair it. What's the next photo? So this is how I traveled to Adepticon with a base in my case. You can kind of see the crack around this eagle from where it came off, and had to fix all the painting. So that was really fun. Yeah, so that was a good time. There's me in bed with Magnus, feeling a little better at that stage. So the next day, 2 days later, we're in America at Adepticon. I have Miller putted over all the damage and sanded it flat, but we still need to get the model in. Yeah, so that bears worth mentioning. Claire had to talk me into taking the model because I was too distraught. I thought I wouldn't be able to fix it and I wouldn't be able to enter. And she talks me into taking it with me and fixing it there. So the base on the 27th, after a bunch of painting at Milwaukee, we've got it mostly fixed. I feel like on the Eagle you can't really super easily see the break line. This is actually after I've fixed most of the painting, so you can actually see I've painted like the skulls a bit more. I hadn't actually painted the teeth on these things. If you go back a video, a slide, you can actually see at the bottom of these little guys I haven't painted the teeth in. And so I actually had some time to make the base a bit better. I made the marble look a little more interesting in some spots, and I painted the teeth in all the skulls, and I improved the skulls a little bit. Definitely Claire gets the credit for giving me the demon. Exactly, Loku. That was very, yeah, it was a big bed. Couldn't be too close. No, look at that. I mean, we had a nice little snuggle. But anyway. And then this was the real moment of triumph. Was 5 o'clock on the 27th. Deadline for entries was midday the next day. So this is 5 p.m. the day before. The model is glued in, and look at that angle. That was perfect. I really would find it hard to accurately put into words the feeling of when this model was glued in to the base at the right angle and felt solid. So one thing that bears saying is Jason / Valbjorn, the true hero of Golden Demon, as well as Claire for convincing me to bring the model. I got in touch with Valbjorn. I'd only ever spoken to him online, and without having ever met me before, he gave up 3 hours of his afternoon on the 26th of March, helping me, with his giant toolbox that he had brought for the classes he was teaching, to get pins in place to make this thing work. And there is no chance I would have been able to fix it on my own without his sort of expertise. So I don't know if it's sort of super easy to see, but we basically hollowed out this hole a bit more. We drilled into the brass rod on the foot and the base and inserted a really tiny brass rod. And then we found a spot in the foot to put another rod in. So there's now 3 rods in the foot. Because the rod was so thick, there was not actually enough room to put another rod that went all the way up the leg. And we could only drill into the existing brass rod, because it's very hard to drill into brass, as you can imagine. We could only drill into it maybe 2 millimeters each way. And I had a little nub of rod on the base already, which you can kind of see here, to give the toe a spot to slot in that got the angle of the composition right. So there's that in the toe. There's another rod that goes sort of like halfway up his shin, which was as high as I could get it. And then there's the nub of brass rod that was remaining. And so we got it fixed. This was a real moment. It was 5 p.m. like I said. I got the rest of the model glued together. The thigh plate, the 2 arms. Got this arm in. Thigh plate in. Look at that. It's all glued together. I just had to gap fill at the back on the arms, because obviously, like I mentioned earlier, I had to leave wiggle room in the arms so that it would sort of go together right. And they needed to be gap filled. So gap filled, painted over the putty. And then we're done. It was, there you go, 7 o'clock on the night before. And we are all finished up, ready to enter it the next day. I tracked down Mr. Bruce from Geek Good and got him to take some photos for me, because I wanted to milk this for all it's worth on my Instagram and have at least a nice photo to post at the show that wasn't just from my phone. So here we go. Got my first time entrant card from Golden Demon. That's him in the cabinets. I think, yeah, we got some photos here just from his camera in the hotel lobby. There was a moment where we went into Rob's room to take a photo, and I almost dropped Rob's lamp on the model. Literally landed like an inch from the model on Saturday at about 10:30. So like if it had hit that model, like I would not have had enough time to fix it. So we just had to do one last gauntlet of danger. And it had it in a nice spot. It was pretty low down in the cabinets, but because of that, it made the angle of the bike hovering quite noticeable in the cabinets, which was cool, even if the painting wasn't at the best angle. And that's it. Look at that. We ended with our demon, despite the fact that they glued the label of the demon on a bit off center. We can't complain. We got him fixed. An annoying thing about the photo is we got the super glue residue in the photo, but hey, look, it is what it is. And that's pretty much it, my friends. I mean, I don't know. That is the story of the piece. Unless how I made it, how I painted it. Unless there's anyone who has another question about it, I'll probably get close to wrapping things up. I'll say a few things that like, uh, you know, Golden Demon has such a great community. Like the painting competition community of people like is really the best. Like the amount of people um, who helped me get this fixed, because I, as I mentioned, was coming to the show like having damaged this thing 2 hours before I got to leave. I didn't have time to pack my suitcase with like all the tools and shit that I would need. I had my brushes with me, but I didn't have any of the sandpaper or the putty or the sculpting tools or anything or paints. Um, and like there were an uncountable number of people who let me use their stuff. Um, and I really can't thank all of them enough. And there are people whose names I don't even know or remember who were included in that, and I'm sorry to those people. But I really appreciate everyone, because like I said, I wouldn't have been able to get this done without them. And the other thing is really, if anyone's watching and wants to go to Golden Demon, you really should, because it's a great community. It's a great group of people, and everyone's very welcoming. You know, like there were a lot of people there, including like painters who I really looked up to and didn't know, and sort of were very welcoming, and it was a really amazing experience to go and see like all the positivity. It's kind of crazy like how positive people are at painting competitions. Like I think there's this like this sort of like stereotype that like these painters are like elitists or like, I don't know, think they're above everyone who paints gaming models or tabletop quality stuff. But it's just absolutely, it couldn't be further from the truth. Like everyone is so welcoming and so positive when you go to a competition like this. They just want to talk about cool models. And so if you like talking about cool models, just go and find people near the Golden Demon cabinets and like have a chat. It's the same at any painting competition. Like in all the painting competitions we have in Australia, it's definitely the case. So yeah, you know, like you got to come along to one of the events. Loku, I love how many people in the competitive level of painting will go out of their way to help you get better. It's so true, right? Unseen in other competitions, such a vast part of the communities. Yeah, I'm competing with you, but let me help elevate and fix the mistakes on your work. So that's the thing, right? And I think the thing about like quote unquote like competitive painting, because it's such a weird thing to say, is that you never really feel like you're competing against each other. It's kind of like you're competing against the show or the judges. Like you're trying to beat the judges rather than trying to beat the other painters. And I know Golden Demon is a painting competition where there can only be 3 people who win a trophy, but it never really feels like, at least for me, it didn't really feel like I'm trying to beat the other painters. It really felt like I'm trying to beat Games Workshop. You know, I'm trying to like have painting good enough that they have to award me or something. And that's kind of why I think you have a really like positive thing, especially at Golden Demon, where like there is this kind of cloak and dagger around the judging. Obviously there's like Eric there, but there is also like there's like a shroud of secrecy around the judging. And so yeah, it's kind of like it is really like you're trying to beat the competition rather than trying to beat each other. At least that's how I felt. And so it makes it more it makes it much more positive in my mind, because no one's thinking like, oh fuck, like, you know, X painter has just dropped some mad model in whatever, they're gonna smash me, or, you know, at least that's not how I felt. You know, it is really like painters versus judges more than painters versus each other. Or like, and you're trying to beat the past version of yourself. If there's another painter you're trying to defeat, it's like you from 6 months ago, rather than like your friends who are at the show. And like when I was at the ceremony, and the ceremony was really like no award ceremony I've ever been to, but like when I was at the ceremony, I barely even remember getting my award and going on stage. I mean, I got too hyped up, and I forgot even to like shake Eric's hand and say thank you before I ran up on stage and got it, and then ran off stage. I didn't really like bask in the moment, maybe like I should have. But like what I enjoyed most about the ceremony was like seeing my friends win. You know, that was the best part. You know, I was sat next to Andy Wardle, who was really really welcoming as well. Like we hung out a fair bit over the show, and he was like stressing out about how well he was going to do at the awards ceremony, you know? And that's like someone who is as much of a Golden Demon veteran as you can be. And he was still like, as it was getting close to diorama, was like, man, I'm getting nervous. And when he won, it was a great moment. It was awesome. When a lot of the people who I had met then won, those are the things that I kind of remembered the most about the ceremony. It was really, really good. Talking to Marco Frassoni, right? Like he's someone who like is a super experienced painter. He's won Golden Demons before. And with his crazy slug on the crazy resin base, like he was stressing just as much as anyone else in the way to awards. And then seeing him take that silver demon was amazing. So that was like some of the most memorable parts of it. Like, you know, you can walk away disappointed, especially a competition like Demon. And I'm sure there are people, you know, there might be people in this chat who are disappointed in their results at Demon. But like, it really takes the sting off the disappointment. I think when, you know, you're there with your friends and you get to see them succeed, and share in that win, especially if they're like people who you got to chat with over the course of making the models, because it is such a grind and it's such a like sacrifice to make these models. Like this was 4 months of my life, like 4 months of at least full-time hours on the piece every week. At least, you know, if not more. Like in the 7 days leading up to the competition, I put in, I think, a bit over 80 hours. I think closer to 90 actually. And so like, you know, you really do like put in a crazy amount of effort to make these pieces for competitions. And yeah, getting to share in the wins with people is pretty special. And it was a great, really, like, I can't say enough about how good the event was. And also for Games Workshop for running it. Like, it was crazy how well run it was. I thought, like, how much care Games Workshop put into dealing with the entries, making sure it's as good an event for the painters as it can be. Again, like, there's a lot of people who are very cynical about Games Workshop, and it's very easy to be cynical about Games Workshop for some people. But like you look at the care that they put on Golden Demon and the amount of like respect they give to the painters, it becomes quite difficult to be, if you participate in the competition and really try to look at it. I feel like it's quite difficult to maintain that cynicism. Just chatting with some of the people, like chatting with you know. One of the judges, or chatting with one or two of the people who are like handling the models behind the scenes, you can tell that they really care about the competition being like for us who put the effort in to make the entries. You know, it's a pretty great event, and I really am looking forward to going back to it again. Yeah, exactly, Rob. I think like that's the thing. Admittedly, like I can say all of this having gotten a good result at Golden Demon, right? Having won a demon. So it's pretty easy for me to be positive, but I really am not lying when I say like the most memorable part of the weekend for me was seeing my friends win and go up on stage and like the happiness they felt, the relief they felt after all that time, and being able to like see and share in everyone's entries after the competition, after you go and get them back as well, was pretty special. Sam, what varnish did you put on the model? I did not varnish the model. This is all just straight from the paint. I generally try to avoid varnishing the model. I did treat it in some areas, so I'll just brush on. I'll just say I'm gonna wrap up the stream within the next 5 minutes. So if there's something you want to know, throw it in the chat real quick. But yeah, I didn't varnish all over the model. I just used quite matte paint, and then I will treat individual areas of the model to give it a particular finish. Like if I need it more matte or more satin or more gloss, I'll just paint it on in small areas. I just find it too imprecise. That's the reason I don't varnish the whole model. And I know like you can just varnish the whole model and then treat individual parts of it with different mattenesses and stuff. But I tend to prefer just working with different types of paints where I'm I know the finish of it. I know the finish of the paint. Yeah, so you're right. I'm saying it sounds like it varnishes, but I did not varnish all over the model, right? So I didn't spray the model or airbrush the model with varnish. I literally only just a few small individual spots. I just painted on either a clear coat of varnish here and there, just for some small little areas. Just because I tend to like baking that in. Yeah. But anyway, that is it, I think. Thank you guys for joining me. I am going to try and stream a little more consistently and actually paint some stuff. So I will try and whack a stream on of painting within the next week or two. This was a long one. It went much longer than I thought it was going to. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm certainly planning to do this more regularly. So just, I don't know, pay attention to the Insta or follow the stream. I will be back again online doing some painting or chatting miniatures. I don't know. I feel like I should do what everyone does and do like a little wrap up of like the entries I really liked at Golden Demon or something. I was actually planning on doing that as part of this, but I just ran out of time and I'm tired now. Thanks for following Dorian Miniatures. But yeah, I definitely will stream again, and I will do some actual painting, because I'm trying to do some more casual stuff for a little while, rather than jumping back into like a crazy high stress, high stakes entry. I'll definitely try and make like this Sunday starting at 8 was a regular stream I would do a while ago. But I'll try and do some through the week as well, maybe at like a slightly more favorable time for any Americans who might be watching as well. Thank you, Popsicle, by the way. I appreciate you saying so. I'm really, really pleased with how many people have said like this is one of their favorite entries at Demon. I really wanted to go with a piece that was either going to be a piece that won or a piece that was memorable enough that everyone thinks it should have won. And I feel like I got that. I have a piece that managed to win and managed to win in a memorable way. So I'm super pleased with the reaction it's had. And thanks everyone for coming in and talking. It's much easier to ramble on when you're talking to people. So, yeah. All right, friends. I think I'll leave it there. Thanks again for joining me. And I will see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.